You're good.
Okay, it's 7 o'clock, and I'll call the meeting to order. If you can stand with me if you can, pledge allegiance.
Pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Jackie, you have a roll?
I do.
Okay, so we have quorum. Item C, adoption of the agenda. The only other change that I'm aware of is the additional list of bills that Jackie put out this afternoon, right? Sometime?
Yep.
At some point?
Yep, it's not a change to the agenda, but yes, in addition to the supporting documents, yes.
Okay. With Assembly, that makes it a little bit different on how we should handle that moving forward. Should we just consider that part of the supporting documentation? You okay with that? All right.
Would you guys prefer a printed copy at the meeting like we've done in the past, or are you guys fine with it just being uploaded?
I think we still need to work on the notification for when it pops up. Did you get anything this afternoon? Assembly
When
notification?
Jackie added
Yes.
the bills, I don't think I did.
So I don't know how to change
Yeah.
that.
So I think if we get that squared away, then I'm okay with, we probably don't need paper copies if we can see it. What do you guys think? You want a paper copy or?
I don't need a paper copy typically, I mean, if that
It's
gets,
already published.
Okay.
Yeah, that'll be something he and I'll have to work on because it's already published.
Yeah,
Yeah, okay,
sure. And maybe if it's just an email
Yep,
or whatnot.
exactly, yeah. I'm trying to cut down on those and then obviously that.
Yeah, no worries. Okay, so I'll take a motion to adopt the agenda when you're ready.
Make a motion to adopt the agenda.
I'll second.
Motion and second to adopt the agenda. All in favor say aye. Opposed? Motion carried. Item D, public input on non-agenda items. Anybody signed up to speak tonight? Okay, anybody want to speak on an agenda item? Besides you? Yes. Okay, very good. Move on to item E, approval of minutes of past meetings.
As you can see, I tried to take out all the fluff, so it's a little bit easier to read through compared to what you approved last month. I just kind of took out all the headers and things, but otherwise it should be the gist of it and as what was posted.
There's no questions or comments on those. I'll entertain a motion to approve them when you're ready.
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes.
Second. Motion and second to approve the minutes of the past meetings. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item F, approval of financial items. Financial reports, summary list of bills, and Jackie's report. Go ahead.
Well, unfortunately, Jackie's report and the financial report are the exact same thing. I'm not sure why I double listed those, so you can ignore number 3 other than some more comments after the financial. But if you'll click into the first thing on the activities report, you'll have before you there the activity fund, the hot lunch fund, student construction, FFA farm, and split fund. The activity fund, the only thing, I'm not sure if I reported it the last month or not, I can't remember, and I didn't have time today to go out there and re-watch, but we no longer have a CD of activity funds. I did remove that, and it is all fluid funds now with a money market at Premier Bank and then the checking account at US Bank, simply because we were getting down a little bit in our balances with all of our success last year, so I wanted a little bit more fluid option to those funds. Hot lunch fund is before you. This is for August, remember, so there wouldn't be as much in our salaries and benefits, so that will change going forward, just that those summer months, there's not a lot of staffing that is calculated in there. Student construction continues to run at a negative, as we're aware, as that house is continued to be worked on. FFA farm, not much to report there, and our split fund, which is our insurance, partially self-insured fund. We have plans in the future for possibly some insurance changes and additions, and I'm working with the auditors on how that fund can go, maybe be utilized a little bit better in the future for our staff. Next fund we'll go to is the current annual treasury report FY '22. Actually, that's last year's, excuse me, and we'll just kind of briefly touch on that. That is through August 30th, so if I have any additional entries with the auditor, those will take place. Obviously, they're retro back to June 30th, but just kind of for your information, revenues received to date for last fiscal year are at a little over 10.5 million, with revenues up $276,000 from the previous year. Expenditures are right at 9.8, also up around 299,000, but our revenues versus our expenditures are cumulative. We were up quite a bit, as you can see, and that is simply because we had increased enrollment, we had additional cash levy, and we didn't overspend our expenditures to the significance that we might have in past years. And then our cash sits at 3.6 million, 3.7 million. Annual treasurer's report, still says fiscal year 17, ignore that, but that is current year, and that's for August as well, and then the cumulatives on the side. As you can see, in the income side, there's not a lot. We don't get anything in those summer months from the state. We don't get anything from property taxes, and anything we do get goes back to the previous fiscal year. So that's why the revenues sit at sort of a zero for most of the time. We have a little bit of local funds that come in. Expenditures, again, lower than normal because everything for July and August, except for your annual staff, which includes your administration and your custodial staff, would again all be back to the June 30th date. So that's why those expenditures look a little bit different on this report as well. So I don't have a whole lot to report there in the current fiscal year. The other report is your special revenue board report. This one is important right now because those are the funds we're talking about. We're talking about capital outlay and kind of the balances going forward, and when we're working with Matt and his crew, and then Matt Gillespie with Piper Sandler as well. So sort of funds that you just obviously keep your eye on, and we'll do the same, and we'll talk about those more going forward. And then the only other report I wanted to touch base on in the supporting documents was the 22-23 registration. I wanted to give you just a little bit of the deposits that have been taken in. I haven't reported on this last 2 years simply because it's looked a little bit differently, because we've waived a lot of fees, we haven't collected lunch, and now we're back to collecting those fees again. So I wanted to give you an update of kind of what's come in those three categories. As you can see, lunch is right around $25,000 we've collected just in registration. Now, I'm not counting weekly deposits, that's a whole different thing, but just in those registration dollars, book rent, our book fees, and then the activity tickets sold. So I'll continue to update that if there's any that are still being collected, but otherwise that should be a pretty good picture of the fees that are collected at the beginning of the year.
Are most of those registration deposits like in person, if it doesn't say online?
If it doesn't say online, those are they possibly registered online, but then they said I'll pay in person.
Okay.
So it isn't necessarily that we've helped each individual person register, but
Right.
it is that we've collected in person.
I was surprised at the number in person, but
Yep.
that makes sense if
Yeah.
not actually.
Yep, so a lot of people take advantage of the online registration, but then it does say you have the option to pay in person. And so that's a lot for our secretaries to kind of chase down sometimes, but
Jackie, should the totals match?
no, they should. Yep. I will
mean, it's not a huge issue.
take a peek at that and get back to you on that one. Let's see if as I said to Mr. Jorth, I'm about as unprepared for this board meeting as I have ever been. So if you'll click down into the school business official report, you'll have a complete report. There was obviously a reason I attached a different one.
Not with matches. Yep.
Not sure why. And then, moving on to the summary list of bills, again, I had the September 2022 out there, and then today late I added, and it was later than normal, simply because of timing with everything else going on today, but there is another 1.5 pages, not even 1.5, 1 page of additional bills that are out there for you to review. And Mr. Jordan and I will check into how we can get those notifications if we can, otherwise I'll just go back to sending you an email if there's an update when there are those late of notices.
Excuse me.
Give me a chance to review those.
Any other questions for Jackie?
And the only other update I have is that the audit started today, which is why you'll find me just a little bit frazzled. Today was a little bit crazy, and it'll probably be like that for a few more days while we're all getting to know each other in the district and getting to know their wants and work and what they require. There were 3 of them here today, there'll be 3 again tomorrow, and then probably for Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, 2 on site, so.
Jackie's done a great job as always.
It's
As you can see here, there's a lot of paperwork involved and a lot of pulling of invoices.
Yeah.
Back
Does
and
anyone
forth.
help you with that, or that's just you?
It's just Jackie.
Just me.
you.
Just me, yep. So unfortunately, I had 2 or 3 staff members needing things today, and I just kind of had to say, unfortunately, I'll have to get back to you tomorrow, or, yeah. But the firm that's here, so far, they've been very accommodating, very personable, and so far, things are going well, so. They had a great point of view, which was, we're not here to, be your enemy or catch you in anything. We're here to support and to figure out how we can possibly improve processes or see what needs to be worked on or applaud what's going on. So,
By comparison, how many days did they typically spend outside?
well, the last 2 years were unfortunately not ones I can really measure because of COVID. We almost moved to completely virtual, and so she was here between 1 and 2 work days. And I would assume in the future they'll shrink down as much too. It's just that their initial time in district, they're coming and, I took them on a tour this morning, just even to get a feel for, we talked at lunch with them. They just sort of asked basic questions. Tell us about Central Lyon. They just trying to get, so I don't know that it'll be the same for years going forward, but for right now, it's just the initial.
Sure.
And then the
Makes sense.
the single audit as well with all the federal ESSER dollars adds a whole nother layer to the process. And so there's, additional accountability with those one-time dollars that adds.
So if we use any of those dollars for capital outlay, like a lot of districts are using those dollars to improve HVAC and other things, they actually have to see and account for those items, and it's a lot bigger deal. So if we purchase textbooks with those dollars, they wanna see the textbooks, so. It's just a little more in depth than
what we've been
pulling
used to.
invoices and other things, so.
So should we expect questionnaires again this time around?
I don't know.
Okay.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see if they've got any, exit survey types of things.
Yeah. Typically us board members gotta.
Yep.
You maybe got them to
We did,
the
yep.
2-pagers. So.
And
Okay.
your administrators receive them as well, so
All right,
I don't know.
We shall see.
I think this first year, at least the people in the building on a day-to-day basis, they're just gonna want to interview. And that's why it's an additional couple days this first time around. And like you said,
Yeah,
they had difficulty accessing some of the online software limited stuff. And so we got that resolved today, and they'll continue to access that stuff in the coming weeks.
Right,
as
so
they
they're going
prepare their
straight into
reports.
my software, which is nice for a lot of the reporting as well. So. That's all I have unless there's more questions.
Anybody have anything else? Ready? Entertain a motion for those 3. Are you ready?
I'll make a motion to approve the financial items as listed.
Second?
Motion and second to approve the financial items as listed. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Motion carried. Item G, administrative reports, discussion items. First item, recognition and congratulations to student, staff, and community. Mr. Jordan.
Yeah, so like Jackie, I added our recognition of students in here this afternoon. Mr. Rockhill informed me Gabe Quaker, Karina Thiedens, and Trey Vandekop were all received the American degree this summer. That's a national FFA award, and as it says there, it's the highest award provided by the National FFA. And, you know, it's in recognition of their kind of SAE projects, so those supervised agricultural experiences that they oftentimes are multi-year projects. And these three are graduates, so they continue to work on those even after they've graduated from Central Lyon. And then obviously their leadership and community involvement. So hats off to those three. Our athletics off to a great start. You know, cross country ran tonight, but both the girls and the boys teams have been running very well. Lane Henricks on the boys side won the Sibley meet last week, so and tonight. So
Barry won tonight also.
Lane's off to a great year. You know, and when I talked to him last week, you know, both of his times in those first two meets were personal records, and he broke his personal record at the Sibley meet. So he's off to a great start. Girls are off to a really strong start too, and I think both teams, what I saw in the review this weekend, are rated in the top 20 in the state. So expectations are high as we kind of get into the season. Same thing on the football field. You know, we're 3-0. Depending upon the publication, you know, we're ranked either second or third in the state in Class 2A. So we host West Lyon Friday for the Beef Bowl. The Cattlemen's will have the tailgate this Friday down at the Activity Center. Anybody wants to come and partake before the game. And then volleyball had a great week last week, 6-1, brings their overall record to 7-3. And I think it's Thursday they play at home, not tomorrow, Thursday versus MOC. That'll be our first home volleyball match of the year. So can't say enough about those activities. And then also I attached here the cast for Bye Bye Birdie. And so that production's not until later this fall, but you can see there's over 20 kids cast in the production, high school, 9th through 12th grade students. So they're rehearsing and learning their lines and learning the tunes for the production. So off to a fast start. Mr. Harmon, Mr. Engelman, anything to add recognition-wise? So,
Okay, thank you. Item 2, communications. Anything to report there?
No.
Item 3, staff presentation.
We're going to start next month, most likely a TLC, teacher leadership presentation for October. And I know Bill Allen and Lillian Downer would like to come in, so they're probably on tap for November or December, kind of as our staff presentation. We reported last month that Lillian was a member of that runner-up team, so Bill come and talk about that. And Eric Arnold's also kind of kicking off that first LEGO League in the middle school as well. Jerry had started it last year, and Eric, you guys hired last month as that coach and sponsor, so those two together most likely November.
Good. Item 4, principals. Mr. Harmon, PBIS.
Right, just wanted to give you an update of where things are at or where we're heading with things. I just gave you a brief synopsis of the 3 different tiers that we're working with. Where we started, we are in year 5 for the preschool through 4th grade, and basically year 2, almost year 3 in the middle school. But through 6th grade, we're working on the process here with the universal tier, those basic expectations going through. We just started collecting data as far as the whole student body Monday, today, and now we're going to start using it as an indicator of what needs to happen in the upcoming months. And if you go into my attachments, kind of used the new graphic this, but it kind of made a lot of sense to me how this is going with the tiered approach for the intensive tier and the supplemental tier. And that's where the tier 2 team is really using its time to start getting into that, because we're gonna have students that are gonna need the additional attention or the additional process to find success here at Central Lyon. Let me just give you a brief a description of that. The tier 2 team deals with kids that we identify as having 3 minors or 2 majors in a 2-week span, so are high flyers. We notify the parents that we're starting this process. The biggest thing that we enjoy about this is then they have an adult mentor check in with them as many times as we need. We start off with 2 to 3 times a day. If that's not working, we up it more. Just someone checking in, finding how things are going and moving that process along. We have had students that will work through the 6-week, 8-week period and do well, and as soon as they're back off, they become a high flyer again, and so that's where we're delving in this year, our tier 3 or our SAGE groups. The SAGE group is a new process for us. We're using the Milwaukee curriculum, which I attached. I'm not gonna go through a ton of it because you guys had time to look through it there, but the biggest section that I'd like you to pay attention are the last 2 pages. Down there is the classroom survival skills, and these are the individual units that we will actually have small groups with these students and start instructing them on what we expect or what we want them to be as a Lion. Again, we're not trying to create robots, but at the same time, how to listen, how to ask questions. We're finding that more of our students are coming less prepared to school, and this is a way that it's a positive approach because we encourage students to want to follow these directives. So we're excited to be in this book. It's very simple. It gives really good curriculum steps and kind of mini units to discuss, and it's just that more of an intensive approach where these kids can, learn what we want from them every day, and then we hope that they want to follow it. And it goes back to, if we don't give them that type of attention, they're gonna find it anyway. And that's why they're gonna be the high flyers. So we wanna make sure that they feel acknowledged and they know exactly what we're trying to accomplish with our emotional and our survival skills that we have every day in school, so. But yeah, any questions that the pages I provided or that did not provide?
Steve, you said that the level 3, the intensive tier students get a mentor, an adult mentor?
Yeah.
Is that typically a teacher?
Yes. Now, we are looking into this year bringing in community members to our Character Strong will be my presentation next month. We want to get some more things in line before I talk about that. But along with our Character Strong, our social emotional curriculum, that they come in and they're going to either meet with individual small groups or they also go into a class and just take 5 or 10 minutes, just like we have an adult come in and read, come in and talk about what respect is to them or in their workplace. So that's another community component that I have a list of about 25 adults around Rock Rapids and Dune that they're coming in to already present to us. So we just want to get far enough in our curriculum that we can talk about some of those topics. Yeah.
Anything else for Steve? Okay, thank you. Thanks, Steve. Mr. Engelmann?
Yeah, talk a little bit about student attendance, kind of give you a rationale as to what we're, kind of why we're putting a stronger emphasis on this this year as opposed to the last couple of years as we were kind of going through the COVID stretch there. Last year, at the end of the year, I kind of looked over some data, and it was eye-popping the number of students that we had gone from school, both unexcused and excused. So we had a high percentage of students that were absent from the building, either half a day or a full day of school. And if you look at our policy, if you look at our handbook, it states in there, and I would echo this many times over, it's the belief of Central Lyon that something important happens every day here at school and every class. So we try to put focus back on getting students in the classroom as often as possible. Kind of analyzing the field trips that we're taking, and of course we want success at the state level, district level, so we're gonna miss school. But getting a little bit better about holding students and families accountable for unexcused absences. So looking at those numbers, we kind of put a few things. Now, if you look at some of the details that I provided, the current form of policy are really, they're basically the same. Nothing was really added, with the exception of just some fine wording there as far as the letter at 5 unexcused absences, 8 unexcused is a letter as well as a required parent meeting. 9 unexcused absences is a loss of credit, but there is a credit appeals process, something that I actually had to go through quite often before COVID got to us. And then 12 unexcused absences is that mediation with the county attorney to address compulsory attendance. So it's basically kind of outlined there, and then it goes into excused, unexcused. You know, the excused absences are those illnesses, and the healthcare provider provides a note for that, family emergencies, recognized religious observances, and school-sponsored or approved activities. Unexcused is, you know, anything really that doesn't fall under that umbrella, with the idea that there is some discretionary decision-making by myself and administration. So we understand as a district that not everyone can go to the doctor when you're ill all the time. We also understand that not everybody will take vacations when we plan out spring breaks and holiday breaks. So there is a level of discrepancy there, but the bottom line is we need more communication. And we need to set these kids up for success, and we're hearing that back from our community partners and our employers that they want not only good employees, but they want employees that are gonna show up, and they want them to be punctual. So that's kind of a big emphasis we placed. We've added things like the admit slips, which were actually, many years ago, were part of our regular day. Kids needed those to get in and out of classes. If they were gone, that was their ticket back into the room. If they were leaving a class, that was their ticket out of the room. So by doing that again, we are strengthening our lines of communication. I think every staff member would agree that students now are communicating with staff more times than not when they're gonna be gone. And for some, that's a little bit difficult because they lack some of those communication skills. So that's an unintentional way to cut down on absences, is to put them into some of those vulnerable situations, but it is situations that we as adults need to do when we miss work or we miss obligations. So just looking, as you can see, we did do a pre-planned absence form, so if you're gonna be gone for that week-long vacation, you make contact and we have record of that instead of a he said, she said. Well, I talked to my teacher, or I didn't get their email. Now we have some copies here in the office that we know communication occurred. The attendance committee, we have a couple members from each building that are on an attendance committee to be more proactive and to design strategies to help students who are battling attendance issues become better. So that's kind of in a nutshell what we're focusing on. I would tell you, last week I checked, and after 10 days of school, mind you, we have 20 more kids, 7 through 12 this year than we did a year ago. We have cut down on unexcused absences by half, 50%. So, and that number was quite high. So it's already showing quality results, and again, the teachers would say, more kids are talking to us, more parents are calling in, more people asking what work they have to complete. And, more people are moving around appointments that at one time they said were unmovable. They're just moving them around and making their kids attend school more regularly.
So like an absence, is that a day absence, or could that just be an hour absence if you?
Yeah, so we really break it down. Our GMC breaks it down more so in half days. So you're half, you know, like someone may miss 2.5 days in a semester. So that's typically what it's broken down into. We do take period attendance, just to see if there's a pattern into what classes students are frequently missing. So we are watching kind of on all fronts.
And has there been communication with parents about this change, or is it mostly just been with the students?
A lot with the students. The back to school newsletter kind of emphasized some of that. And again, hopefully some people are reading through the handbook when they, you know, when it gets approved here at the board table or when they go to our district website. So, and anybody that calls in, we're glad to talk to them about it and give them clarification. So we don't want it to seem like you can't ever miss a day, because that's unreasonable. But ongoing communication, and do your best to make adjustments to your schedule if you can. You know, you can't plan to when you're going to be sick. But if you're sick for a number of days, then we kind of expect you to go get checked out. So just it eliminates a lot of, you know, when you're not here, naturally you're not typically doing this well in your classes. We're trying to take out, you know, kind of the blame game is, well, when you're not here, just understand that sometimes it's less likely that you're going to be part of all the great discussions we're having, in-class activities, so we want you here. Emphasis. Any questions?
Not a question, just a comment, just so we don't incentivize kids to come to school when they are sick, it should be.
Yep. Mhm.
And certainly that would be something that I would expect Brenda could help us with that screening if necessary.
Absolutely. Yep. So when they're here at school, we always want Brenda to evaluate them before they go home, and Brenda can give us her healthcare advice on that. And I have a pretty good feeling that I know the families pretty well, and we appreciate those that call in, and obviously that's where the discretion comes in. You know, I don't want to send a letter to someone who has been up front, getting their work done, making every effort to get here.
Right.
But I don't want them to go to the doctor every day. That doesn't make any sense.
So,
Thanks, Mr. Engelmann.
You bet.
Moving on to item 5, superintendent report, Mr. Jorth.
Yeah, a couple things. Siouxland Conference update. I know we've had multiple conversations around the board. I'm sure you've had conversations in your peer groups in the community. I know George Little Rock has had a couple community meetings, and at their board meeting here in a week, they will be voting to either continue as a member of the Siouxland Conference or to exit and join a different conference. So we know that if they should leave, that's gonna set off some chain of events in the conference, lead to further conversations about what our membership would look like going forward. We're trying to nail down a date for our sharing committee to continue that conversation with George Little Rock and what that might look like in the event that there should be a change. So I will continue to keep the board updated about any developments regarding the conference. And then I guess our hope would be that the sharing committee would meet between now and our October meeting, and we can kind of, as a group, update the board on the fruits of that conversation as well. So everything's speculation at this point until action is taken by George or other schools in the conference or other schools petitioning to join our conference. It's hard for me to really tell you what's gonna happen. But once those things are official, we'll continue to update and make sure the board's aware of where we're going and what may or may not happen.
So if they would vote to leave, is that something that would start next year?
Yep, so, you know, the bylaws say that they have to give 1 year notice. And so even though we're into the start of this school year, the conversation has been, since it's really we're in that first month of the year, if they were to leave, the intent would be that they would begin competing in a different conference for next school year. We wouldn't necessarily hold them to volleyball or cross-country next fall. If it were to get into the middle of the winter, then that would be a different conversation because those schedules are a little bit more difficult to rearrange when it comes to basketball and wrestling. So that's why I think George just wants to make a decision now so they can really let everybody else know when those schedules can be adjusted. So that's kind of the update on the conference. I'm gonna move on to the facilities project. Matt from FEH is here, his colleague Patrick as well. We've met multiple times with the Buildings and Grounds Committee, and then you saw that their contract and proposal for next summer's projects is the first action item of tonight's agenda. But I do wanna, Matt's got a kind of an agenda here that he wants to run through for the entire board and just answer questions and have a conversation collectively. Kind of talk through what's a part of the board packet, but then also review a couple projects that were a part of our original study. So Matt, kind of turn it over to you.
Yeah, you mind if I join you at the table there? I got several things to go over. It'll be easier, I think, for us to do it that way. Thank you for having me back again. You all know that we're right in the middle of the process with some facilities improvements planning. And so I wanted to give you a little update on where we are with all that, because there's several components to this study, as you know. The first one that Superintendent Jorth mentioned was our contracts. If you recall, when we talked about this before, we had proposed to give you what's I would consider a master contract, as some of these projects are gonna go over the next several years to complete. So I have completed a master contract. I use the AIA documents, which are normally used under this situation for educational projects. So it's a very standard document that our trade group puts out. So you had that, I believe, in your packet to look at. It isn't very specific for a reason, and that's because we've got a lot of different projects over a lot of different years. So what I then intended to do was, each time we have a new project that comes up, we would make an amendment to that overall contract. So you would know the terms of the contract in general between us for all those projects, and then we would put the specific terms of each project into an amendment, which this contract is a group of documents that all work together. So I can write an amendment that folds everything in from that original contract. So you also have our first amendment, which is the form of a letter agreement, and that is for the projects that we've been talking about for next summer. And those are, to review, the bus barn project, a bridge repair, and/or we've also done a little bit of work on a stair tower study, which you asked us to look into last time, and I'll go into that in a few minutes. Partial window replacement, that would be the lower level windows in the old building. Casework replacement in those same classrooms that we're talking about doing window replacement in. And 2 playground upgrades. That's the early education and the kindergarten playground. So those are the projects that are included in that first letter agreement. As I said, the overall master agreement is more general terms of how we would interact with each other. And then the letter agreement is very specific to what we're doing for this coming first project. If anybody has any questions about that approach or anything, I'm happy to answer any questions. I don't want to take a lot of time on that. We do need to have some kind of action on that fairly soon, because we're already working on some of these projects, and so we want to get that taken care of so we can continue to do our work. We also, remember, are up to somewhat of a deadline, because as we've talked before with the Building and Grounds Committee, and I think I updated the full board on, the way that construction is working right now, it's very difficult sometimes to get materials and labor lined up for the correct timing that we have for time available to do the projects. When it's a matter of getting materials and supplies, we call that lead time. So some of the products that we're trying to get, that would be roofing, electrical panels and parts, windows and doors. Some of those things are taking quite a while to get right now. So what our approach to this first project was, we'd like to get this out for bid in mid-November-ish, and then get you a bid by mid-December. So that, number one, we're kind of first out of the box going into the spring and summer period of next year. Also, over the holidays is a really bad time to bid anything. It just doesn't work out very well with everybody's schedule. So that is our loose schedule right now. Our plan is to bring back in your October meeting some more specific information about what the projects are, what they're gonna cost, what the timing for bidding is, what the timing for construction is, and that kind of thing. I have a general outline for you tonight, and then we'll just kind of refine that as we go along. Does anybody have any particular questions about the form of the contract or anything that I could answer for you before we move on? Okay, if not, I would just ask that we try to, get that in place as soon as we can, as soon as you're comfortable with that, so that we can continue our work. Next, after we talked last time, and we had the bridge repair project that came in and the bids were quite high, I have found out quite a bit more about that circumstance, and it doesn't really matter to us now, other than it's interesting and it helps me going forward in planning the rest of them. One of the really big issues that I found out that I didn't realize was quite an issue, and I don't think the contractor did either until they started to look at it, was how we were gonna access that area and actually do the work in that small space. That ended up to be quite an issue. And one of the things I found out was they were gonna have to rent a very large crane to do that work. I have since done some more work on that particular part of the project and found that if we combine this with some other projects and we do it in a certain way, we can eliminate that problem because they're gonna have other equipment on site, smaller equipment working in the same area. So that was one of those factors, I think, with that project that I don't think we fully understood how hard it was gonna be to get in there and do that. There were a couple of things like that that I was able to kind of flesh out after I talked to them a little bit more. I thought you might be interested because I know we talked last time, so I did find that out. As far as the stair tower itself, I do have a study sheet up there that if you want to bring that up, we can go over that real quickly. What I attempted to do here is give you some basic information between the two solutions for either repairing the bridge that you have or possibly replacing it with a stair tower, as we had talked about before. So if you recall, when we did bid that bridge replacement project, we were not replacing the entire bridge, we were doing some repairs to the bridge that you had, meaning the deck was gonna be replaced and the railings, but a lot of the structure was gonna stay as it was because it was still appropriate to use. And at that time, the cost was over $200,000, and that was quite a bit over our estimate. So I think that's when we started to think about, well, what are some other options that we might have? And a stair tower came to mind. So I started to look at that. There's actually another drawing in there. If you go into the drawings, Brent, I think there's one that says stair tower. And I can kind of show you what we're looking at for a design. One thing that I'm trying to be real careful of here is I know that this particular location is valuable as we go forward, and the district may have some need for an addition, for additional classrooms. So I wanted to try to figure out a way to design this so that it would not impede you from adding in that same location and just working around what if we added a stair tower and what that might look like. So the first sheet up on top is basically a plan. It's a 2-story space over there. Currently, with the bridge concept that you have, there is no way other than the internal stairs on the other end of that corridor to get between the two levels without going outside. So that was something that we thought was interesting in looking at it. With the design that I'm showing here, we could essentially knock out a few panels in this thing and we wouldn't have to change anything if we added, say, 4 classrooms, a 2/2 type of an addition or something in the future. We would just build right around this. So that seemed appealing as far as a design way to handle something like that. It could be that you never do the addition, but we just don't want to cut off that option for you if you did. So that's essentially what it would look like. You know, we would use the same materials and that kind of things you have in the building. I think once it was done, it wouldn't even look like, it would look like it would have always been there. You know, it's easy to match and that kind of thing. So that's kind of the way that we looked at the design. If we go back to the comparison sheet then, excuse me. So it would be a 2-story addition on the east end of that classroom wing, and the materials and design would match what you have. And it can be designed so that that future addition is an option. This is quite a bit more expensive option, as you can see. I currently have it estimated at around $600,000. We had talked about $500,000 or so. What I forgot was if we do this, we still have to knock down the bridge. So we've got some costs there that would be associated with this project. So there's about a $400,000 premium on this addition. If you go down a little further, I put some pros and cons here, just for your consideration. Obviously the pedestrian bridge, the initial cost is lower. We know that, we knew that was gonna be the case. And the stair tower is gonna be more expensive. But when you start looking at some of the details, you know, there might be some other information that you want to make a decision with. As I said, it wasn't a full replacement of the bridge, so if we do those repairs, another 20 years we're going to have to be doing some more repairs. There's constant maintenance for that bridge because it's outside. Wintertime use is hazard sometimes, slippery and that kind of thing. It's not a viable access between those two levels that you have now because you have to go outside of the building and around to use it. The two-story classroom addition were completed, we would need to modify that bridge then. So if we put the addition on, you still have to bridge that gap if we didn't do the stair tower. So those are some of the cons of that particular approach. With the stair, there are several pros, I think. And it's enclosed and it provides efficient access between the building levels. Obviously, it's gonna save your custodial staff time on maintaining that and also just every day in the wintertime, putting salt on or, making sure that it's safe for everybody to use. And the fact is that the two-story classroom addition would most likely require a stair tower anyway. And the reason that that would be the case is as soon as we add occupied space, we add what's called occupant load. And occupant load isn't really the actual people that you have, it's the number that you could possibly accommodate in that size space. And so we won't have enough access and exiting on that end, and we would probably have to add the stair tower anyway. It also happens to eliminate, right now you have two, and of course the upkeep and maintenance is significantly less than the bridge. And we know that the cost is higher. So we wanted to put some information together for you to consider. Obviously, upfront cost is a really big factor. I think that the bridge is probably gonna have some major components that'll have to be upgraded in the next 20 years because we're not doing that now. And probably then the deck and the railings and things would have to be upgraded again too. So as far as an analysis goes, that's what something like that might look like, what it might cost and what it might benefit the district. Obviously, if we are intending to include either the bridge or a stair tower, we've got to make a decision, fairly quickly to include it on the schedule that we're talking about. So I wanted to get that to you right away. Mr. Jorth, I don't know if you want to have any more discussion about this right now. I'm happy to answer any other questions if there's other thoughts about it. Otherwise, I'll let you think about it.
Yep.
Any other questions on that?
So what is required from an access perspective for that upper level in particular? So right now, we have a bridge out to the sidewalk. Is that primarily because of building code requirements for fire exit?
I think it's required in a couple of different reasons. The design of the building required it because you've got that divide and you need the exit from down below. So they had to dig that out so you could get out. That's an exit requirement from the building. And I think that's why the bridge was designed that way in the first place, because you had two exit points there. Building code wise, we have to be able to get from that exit to the public way, which is actually the sidewalk next to the street. We can't just dump out right at the building. So they also had to get you away from the building. And I think that just happened to be the design choice at the time. And that's why it ended up that way.
So is there an exit out from that stairwell?
Yeah, at the bottom
Yes.
level, there would be an exit out. So as there is now under the bridge, this stair tower would just have one exit and it would come out from below. With this design, it would hook up to the sidewalk that's there. That's the
Along the
sidewalk
street.
that then goes to the previous addition for the athletic complex, and then it goes up to the street from a stairway there.
So it would actually look just like the one that's on the north side of the high school, the weight room.
Weight room.
Right.
That takes care of the weight room, wrestling room, gym, art room, band room, right there, one exit door. So it would look just sort of like that.
Right. And I think the building users, the principals and the superintendent can say what the value of is that access from upper to lower. I mean, you have to go to the other end of the corridor down the stairs and then come all the way back to, access that two-story space.
So kids aren't entering the building on that bridge right now. They're entering either at the elementary entrance or down here at the high school entrance. It's exiting at the end of the day or in a fire drill situation where they're
It's a required exit, that's right.
required exit. If it had the stair, you would exit
That would be the required
on the
exit.
first floor.
Yep. Have to be able to get to grade.
Steve, I'm sure you asked, would drainage be an issue? So much water goes through there.
There's storm drain down
Yeah.
there. There's actually 2 inlets down there, so we would have to rework that a little bit, but it is down there now.
We had to add that when we added on the.
I just
Right.
know that if you put more of a closed area, how it's gonna make the water drain,
Certainly you'd have to work around it.
yeah.
It'd be part of the design to work around it.
Okay.
And right now, it's not surface drainage. There is a drain tile underneath there, so that helps too.
How
Any
does that
other-
keep our bridges free?
Well, right now, we're hand scooping everything because we don't put a tractor out there,
Sure.
so.
So something needs to be done, whether it's the stairway or the stairwell that's been studied now, or we replace what's there, because, you know, it continues to deteriorate, and this winter is gonna have even a greater impact than the last couple winters. So,
And I would use the stairwell just as a fire exit, just like on the north side.
Yeah. You don't
Right
have to
now,
allow
I have
access.
middle
It can
school
be-
teachers that
yeah,
come in there, but they can come in by the weight room and
yeah,
it would just be an exit.
exit only.
But I personally think that another set of stairs would help eliminate, with 7th and 8th grade coming down, we're quite busy on that other stairwell. Now that 7th and 8th grade does everything in the high school,
for lunch
for
and
lunch or for
choir and,
anything, office, everything, they
Yep.
can come, some of the kids can come down that other
Yep.
set of stairwell. But I understand it's higher to repair the bridge too.
For sure.
Could you simply make it a fire exit and just put a landing platform out there and have stairs going down to the south along the building?
You could do an exterior stairway. You cannot do what I would call a fire escape type exit. That's not allowed by code anymore. We could do an outside stair, essentially a fire escape, but it's more of a substantial stair. That is difficult to use, obviously in our climate and everything, because it's outside in the wintertime. But you could do that.
Can we do something like that outside the weight room,
Yep.
room area?
That's how you get up, down.
is a metal stair,
Upstairs.
and it's got a concrete form around it, so you don't really see the metal.
Yeah, that is an
Which
option as
stairs
well.
are this? Which ones are this?
Right outside the weight room.
Yeah, it's on the south side of the weight room.
Oh, sure.
So essentially, those
Yeah.
folks from the first floor can get to the grade instead of going up the hill.
And if you did that, you would have to remove that if you did an addition and do an enclosed stairwell when you did that project, because that wouldn't comply with exiting for the
Sure.
building, but, so
Sure.
that's just another
We're talking
component,
about
but it's a lot of money.
$100,000 versus
Absolutely.
$600,000.
That's absolutely right.
Bus barn?
We can move on if everybody's okay with that. I understand that there was some further discussion about the bus barn and what form that might take. If you remember in the study, we did study both a pre-engineered metal building structure for that and also a concrete block structure. So I did the same type of a study. Most of that was just out of the study that we already did and refreshing people's memory about some of the pros and cons. But I also worked a little bit more on the estimate, called some contractors and that kind of thing to see if I could narrow the gap a little bit on that. So currently, we have just under 10,000 square feet enclosed for, you see the 8 bays there, and then there's a wash bay and a light repair bay. There's this small office, some restrooms, and a storage room inside. We also have one covered bay on the outside, so there's an opportunity for some other fleet vehicles or a bus to be stored outside when the wash bay is being used or that kind of thing, undercover. So the plan hasn't changed very much. What I wanted to do was make an analysis between the pros and cons of the metal building versus the masonry building, and then look at those costs again. So I did that. If you want to go to that, there should be a study for that one on the bus barn as well.
Probably back in the original.
Oh, yes, it would be not in the drawings. Yeah. There you go. So a couple notes on this. I wanted to make sure that everybody understood. When we did the study, we had about a $500,000 difference between the two. Now that we've actually done some more work on it and I've been able to talk to some contractors and I think it's closer to $300,000. So it's still a big difference. But this one, there's quite a bit of difference in the system and its durability and its lifespan and that kind of thing. So again, there's a initial cost savings with the metal building, but in our analysis, I did put down some pros and cons. Before we get to that, I want to remind everybody that when we do construction for a school facility, there's a certain level that we have to stay above because there are code requirements and all those things that we have to meet. There is undoubtedly a cheaper way to do this, but it doesn't rise to the level of commercial construction that we would consider the right thing to do for a school district by building code and that kind of thing. So I put a couple of things in here from the code just to give you that basis of our design and what we're designing from. The building code makes us classify a building depending on its use. This use is considered an enclosed garage, so it has some higher restrictions and things for code. We cannot get around that. No matter what type of structure you put up, it's still an enclosed garage. That means a couple things to us. If it's over 5,000 square feet, which we are, we have to do a fire suppression system, fire sprinkler system, okay? If you go around any other district and look at their bus barn, they won't have that. That's because it wasn't built now. This is code now, so that's our basis of starting. Our construction type also matters. 5B is our type here. That's an unlimited construction type. We can build this out of block or wood or metal or anything we want to because of its size, where it's located, all that type of thing. We have unlimited materials that we can use. When we pick that type though, then we're into a certain amount of building code requirement. So we picked 5B because it's the least restrictive and it gives us the most options. Even with 5B, we still are required to do a fire sprinkler system because of the size of this building and the type. But what we can do is we can use a wood structure or components for some of it. So what we did in the masonry building, we did the bottom portion of the building out of masonry, but as soon as we got high enough, we switched to a wood structure. And that's going to bring the cost down and help with construction types and methods and that kind of thing.
And what is that height?
Right now, we've got the outside walls are around 16 feet tall, and that's to accommodate a 12-foot tall or 14-foot tall door, operable door. And then the inside walls, we've got about 9 feet tall. Okay.
What's the height where it changes from brick, or from masonry?
How tall is
The entire structure up to 16 feet, as we have it designed right now, is masonry.
Okay.
And then we go above that, then we're into a wood roof structure, wood infill walls above that and that kind of thing. And this can change, this is just kind of where we've started as a basis. The other thing that is really starting to get restrictive is the energy code. As soon as we put any type of heating in this building, we have to go by the energy code, and that requires continuous insulation in the building. So it's difficult for a metal building system to get continuous insulation because all of the metal members go straight up and there's no space between the metal and the insulation. So you've got some cold spots kind of through the structure. There are ways to address that, but they start adding cost in such a way that it gets pretty close to a wood structure or a masonry structure anyway. So those are some of the building code elements that we felt were sort of important for you to understand when making a choice on this. So the masonry building overview, as I said, is concrete block. We get to the continuous installation by doing cavity wall construction. So that is, if you've ever seen a building go up, they'll put up the structural component of the masonry first, then they'll put some insulation on, and then there's a veneer that you see on the outside. So that way you have continuous installation from the foundation all the way up to the roof. That's difficult to do with a metal building. There are ways around it, but it's difficult to do. And we would also have internal partitions that are concrete block up to a point. The reason for that really is durability, because you've got a lot of traffic in here and anybody could run into it anytime. We also have a maintenance bay and a wash bay. So when we're introducing moisture and things, that's gonna last a lot longer in a wash bay than a metal building would or a wood structure. So that's the overview for the concrete building. It's gonna look like a concrete building on the outside. The roof structure would be wood. We'd probably use a very durable asphalt shingle instead of a metal panel type system for that roof because it's more economical. And that's the way that we can keep some of that cost down and get it a little more in line with the metal building. On the pre-engineered metal building side, those are packaged buildings that are built off-site and they come in kits, and you guys have probably all seen them before. And that, you get the wall structure and you get the roof structure. You don't really get anything else with it. You've got to fill in on the inside. So if you have a building that needs a lot of partitions and separations on the inside, then it starts to get a little more expensive with a metal building to do that. This is essentially 8 open bays with a couple of bays on the end, so it's appropriate here. It makes sense to consider this type for this type of a structure that we're doing. But remember, you're just getting the walls and you're getting the roof. So by the time we compare those two together, and with the modification of the wood structure that we had for the concrete block, I think this is more in the $300,000 range now in difference between what we had, the $500,000 difference before. And that doesn't change the size or configuration or anything. That's just based on comparing the two structures and what you would need to do. So the pros and cons list up there on the masonry building, I don't think there's anything, rocket science about any of this. It's just to remind everybody. That metal or masonry building is gonna be a 50-year building, and that means it's gonna sit there for 75 or 80 years. Metal building is a 20-year building. That's gonna sit there 20, 25, 30 years, but it's gonna start show corrosion and issues. And you've seen that before. Life of the building, we just talked about that. Durability, obviously, the masonry is gonna be more durable than a metal structure. Most metal structures are just veneered with tin panels, or they can be veneered with other things, but that's the basic model. The masonry building is much more energy efficient. Remember I mentioned that since we are this type of building, we have to comply with the energy code. It's much harder to do that with a metal building than it is with a masonry building. So that's an advantage for a masonry building here. It's more weather resistant. The metal buildings do have a tendency to leak after time and that kind of thing, just because of wear and that kind of thing. And there's lower long-term maintenance and operational costs with masonry building. The cons, obviously it's higher initial cost, and it usually takes longer to build a masonry structure than it does the pre-engineered metal. Remember, the pre-engineered metal building is put together off-site or built off-site, and then they just come put it together. If I've got a mason out there, you've got to lay every block, and it takes longer. So there are occasions when that is enough of a benefit that it would be important to us. The pros of the pre-engineered metal building, obviously the lower cost. It is well suited for simple designs, which this is. So as I said, it was definitely something to consider here. It can be much faster to construct. I will say though that we have done a couple of these projects in the last year for different districts, and it has taken 9 months to a year to get a pre-engineered metal building. I believe that's come down some on the lead time. I think it's more like 4 to 6 months now. We just did one for Okoboji that took a year to get it, and that was ordered during the pandemic, and so it took much longer. But it is taking longer to get those right Durability isn't as good with a metal building, just comparing it with a masonry building. Life of the building, we talked about that. Continued maintenance, we talked about that. It's less energy efficient. Usually they use what we call batt insulation. That's the fiberglass insulation that you see in a metal building. And that's much less efficient than a cavity wall. That's a rigid insulation that's more dense. It's less weather resistant. Issues discussed above lead to more long-term maintenance and operational costs because your staff has to pay attention to them more often. And then we talk about the lead times. So I wanted to give you a little bit of a refresher from the study and a little bit of benefit of more costing that I've done so that you can talk that over and make sure that, you know, we're using the system that's comfortable for you. This is one, again, that we'll need to get a decision made fairly quickly so that we can stay on our schedule, but at least you've got some more information to work with. What questions can I answer for you about any of that?
Go back to the masonry building and help me understand. I kind of picked up on what you're talking about, the construction of the walls.
Yep.
Describe that for me again.
So it's what we call a cavity wall situation. So they'll have the structural element of the masonry, which is like an 8 or 12-inch concrete block. Then we put insulation on that. And then there's a veneer piece, which is just basically for finish. That might be a 4-inch block, a skinnier one. And that allows you to put the insulation all the way from the footing, all the way up in the wall without it being interrupted. So that's a continuous insulation cavity wall situation. That's that construction technique. You see it almost every construction project that's a big box store that's using masonry. Most schools will have it. You've got some here. It's a very common system.
Is that less expensive insulation-wise than like a foam film? On the
Yeah, generally
block?
speaking, it goes bad insulation, and then the rigid cavity wall, so that's a board.
Yep.
And then the spray foam is more expensive. Spray foam is more expensive because it's a 2-part process that they have to get special equipment for, and someone has to know how to do it. So there's a couple level of reasons why it's more expensive. In some cases, it is better. There are cases where the application matters and we would pay for that difference and it's not big enough that it would matter. But that's generally the difference between them. Insulation is one of those things that's very difficult to get right now. Roofing materials, insulation is taking 6 to 9 months, even longer to get. That's another benefit of in this case, both the pre-engineered metal building and the version that we're talking about are better because we don't have to use rigid insulation. We can use different types of insulation to do that, and that's what's hard to get right now. Did I answer the question?
Yeah, so you actually put 8-inch block, use individual block?
Yeah, it's concrete block. It's not like sometimes you see a tilt-up concrete panel that's a big panel, they tip it up into place.
Well, yeah, that's what I was wondering.
Or
is that-
precast,
So why would you use block versus precast?
because precast is way more expensive than
Is it
that.
really?
Yeah.
Even with the labor cost of construction?
Yeah, the issue with precast is it's made off-site, number one.
Yeah.
It has to be all made, rebar installed, openings done, and then shipped. It's the shipping that is a really big part of why that's so expensive. And there's not a factory close. We have some in Minnesota, we have some in the West. I was just telling Mr. Jorth a story about, I was looking into casework for the other project that we're talking about. They told me that the shipping has quadrupled for that. So we're gonna pay probably $6,000 for 2 trucks instead of $1,000 of it would have been before. And precast is really heavy, so you can't haul very much at a time. So it takes a lot of trucks. So it's labor intensive. Also, if you try to put any electrical in it or mechanical in it, you've got to do that ahead of time at the factory, and there's just a lot of different factors for it. Again, there are times and places when that is a good system. I have actually a better system would be you've seen those large foam blocks they use that they pour concrete in the middle of?
Mhm.
That would be a better situation here for us than, say, a precast or a tilt-up type situation. But again, it's still more expensive than the masonry one.
So in the original study, the masonry building, you had quoted at, $2.5 million. And then in the worksheets that we've been sharing, we even increased that to 2.75.
Right.
And then the pre-engineered was at $2 million. So based upon your continued analysis of both of these, you said that is, those two have become closer, but has the masonry building kind of remained in that $2.5 million? Or
Yeah,
is it a little bit?
I
higher?
haven't finished that cost analysis yet because I've got the building kind of estimated. I don't have any of the site concerns in it yet because we don't have DGR on board to help us yet. So what I wanted to do today was just give you what I think the difference between the two is. I still think we're in that $2.5 million range for the whole project.
Yep.
I won't know that for a couple weeks. I'm hoping to get that for you in a couple weeks and come back to you quite a bit before your next meeting so that you know what those are. But I am still working on that. But I do still think it's in that $2.5 million range from what I've been seeing.
So under new business tonight, when we consider the master contract and amendment with Matt and FEH, are you intending for us to give him direction on the options that we looked at with stair versus bridge, masonry versus pre-engineered?
I would like to. I
Okay.
mean, otherwise, we're gonna have to find
No,
a
I
special
gotcha.
meeting for all of us to get back in here.
I'm on board with that. I just
Yeah.
wanted to
Yeah.
understand that's what you were after, what you guys were after.
If
so-
you're comfortable enough to do so, that would be our preference because it would keep us on schedule and everything.
Yeah.
Certainly understand there's a lot to consider, so absolutely ask me anything, whatever information you want or need, I'm gonna try to give you as much as I can now,
Let's come back to that when we get to number one.
okay?
Thanks, Matt.
Couple questions.
Yeah.
Do we need to do anything special to accommodate for future likelihood of electric buses?
Yes,
Or is that,
we have been talking about that a little bit. There is a grant program, I think it's a grant program or whatever
Yep.
term they have for it. And so there's propane, there's electric, there's lots of different considerations. As far as I understand, all that requires is equipment. So we may have to upsize the electrical capacity now to do that. Or we may have to plan for a place to put a propane tank, let's say, if you want to do that. So that is something, once you are comfortable and have made a decision on which way you want to go, it is my intention to come back and meet with these two in particular, and possibly the building and grounds group, if that's what you'd like us to do, and refine the design. Part of that is looking at this grant program and see, there is some money back, it's not a lot of money back. So I don't know whether it pays or not, but yes, we have talked about that a little bit, and it's our intention to continue to look into that. And I assume that would come back to the board then for their final approval.
Steve, is there anything you wanted to?
Explain to me where the block is the block only so actually in the cold storage?
In the block version that we're talking about now, it's all the walls.
All-
The exterior wall is the thicker cavity wall that I described.
All the way around?
On the inside, it's just the 8-inch block, and it goes up to 8 or 9 feet, and that's where we would stop.
And
then
that's
fill in
these
above
two
that.
walls here between the wash bay.
Right, that's right,
Maintenance bay, and then the maintenance bay.
right.
And the rest of the building, and then the interior wall of the office in the bathrooms.
Right, the rest of it's open.
Yeah, no, I knew that.
The other thing that will determine the cost of this is, I'm just gonna give you a couple examples of why this is a little hard to pin down. Do we wanna put a trench drain and have access to sanitary water when buses come in the wintertime and they shed ice and water? Or do we wanna make the janitor crew sweep that out all the time? Well, that's a big consideration if we're gonna do underground, drainage and all that kind of thing. So we're gonna go through that process as we go on here. The big thing is if we get a direction on, which system we wanna use, then we'll keep going on the process.
Do you feel this project is doable this summer with lead times and?
Yeah, I'm gonna get to that. I've got a section in here for schedule of all of them. But what I'm thinking is, let's just go down to that right now, since you asked, that's a good lead in. I'm thinking you can go a little bit farther than that. So right here, at the very end, I say, assuming we do the bus barn project, whether it's the metal building or the other building, I'm anticipating starting in the spring as soon as we can in April. And I think that's a 7 or 8 month project. I think it's done by the end of the year. Not by the end of the summer, but the end of the year. The bridge replacement, should we do that? That's starting in June because I think it's best to start when school's out. And then that's probably a 6 or 7 month project because of lead times and things like that. The other project, the playground windows and doors and casework, we intend to get that done in the summer. And I believe we have time with lead times and everything, should this schedule hold, to do that and make that happen. And then if the stair tower project went ahead, I would think after school's out again, and then probably the end of the year that would be finished, 8 or 9 months to finish. So the intention here would be to get the design and the bidding done this year, and then finish all the projects from April to December of next year. Should that work for all of us? In order to do that, we need the contracts taken care of. We need to be able to hire a mechanical and electrical engineer on some of the projects. We need to hire a DGR for some civil on some of the projects. It's gonna take us a good 6 weeks to 8 weeks to get it all put together for bidding and all that kind of thing. So I kind of just went backwards, and that's where we are now. Okay, so that's a little bit on the schedule. We have hired a geotechnical testing company to do some testing where we are putting the bus barn and where we're doing the playgrounds and potentially where we're doing the stair tower. I need to get some more information on what that soil is there, because that's a huge factor in the cost of the project if we have to take out a bunch of earth and replace it because it's not structurally sound. So that has been started, and Mr. Jorth approved a small contract for them to do some testing. We also have a contract, I think it's been approved with DGR to do some surveying in that area, so we know what we have to work with. We have not started any work on the playgrounds yet because we need that survey to do it. We've done some work on the stair tower. I think we've done some work on everything else, just the playgrounds, we haven't really gotten into that yet. So those are the things that are going on right now, along with the contracts coming to you. And then I think we've gone over the rest of this. We want to get some engineers on board and that kind of thing. So if you are so inclined and you have enough information and can make a decision tonight on those 2 items, that's fantastic. If not, we can set up a work session of the board or another board meeting or something to address that so that we can keep moving. I believe we can still get the project done. I don't want to put this off to your October 10th meeting, but assuming we get everything by that time, because we can still work on some of these other things and then, give you a little bit more time to consider if you wanted it. Did I cover everything in the, I think I did.
Yep.
Any more questions about the process, or can I give you any more information on any of the projects?
Thanks, Matt.
Okay.
Okay, so we'll come back to that item under new business here in a little bit. Mr. Jorth, referral bonus program?
Yeah.
Would you like me to stay for that part?
Yeah.
Okay, I can do it.
We'll be there real quick.
You got it.
Yeah, referral bonus program is something I talked to Andy and Dave about when we met, almost 2 weeks ago now. As you know, we continue to look for para-educators, food service staff members, and I really feel like we need to do something more to try to widen our network for employees. And so, I've talked with our leadership team about, a referral type of process for our current staff members. It doesn't matter if you're a teacher, custodian, food service, anybody that's employed by us that would refer somebody and then ultimately is hired. And so if that person works for us for 6 weeks, the current staff member would receive a $250 kind of bonus or referral bonus. And then if they return the following school year, so they're kind of an employee for 2 school years, it'd be another $250. I just wanted to kind of put that out there. I know Andy had sent me some documents that they have at DGR that they're doing something similar. I don't know if anybody else has kind of got that referral program, if you think. Again, I'm just trying to get people to apply, and the word of mouth that really has been most successful, I think we've kind of hit a wall on that. And I know Jason and Steve are talking to everybody at ball games and when they go to Sunshine or out for dinner. And just, unfortunately, we're just kind of still looking.
Do you think we would put that into policy, or what's your thoughts there?
We could enact it and then rescind it if we felt like at a point.
Kind of like the early retirement.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Would there be something they'd have to fill out, like, or the applicant would say, I was referred by?
Yep, we'd have to
So-and-so.
modify our application materials or provide some sort of addendum to that.
Sure.
I have not yet reached out to ISB, but I know from talking to my network outside of the Siouxland Conference that there are other schools that are doing a referral type of program. So I could see exactly what ISB has to offer to those districts that are current. But is that something that you guys are comfortable if I continue to look into that and bring you something in October if we haven't been able to hire, begin that process? Okay.
Just make sure the timeframes are very clear as far as who, when they get the $250. Maybe particularly more so if they come back for the next school year, how long do they have to stay into that school year? Or they just have to show up for day one and get $250, or when is it?
And there's only so many choices when they're gonna get the $250, because
Agreed.
we payroll once a month, so.
Agreed. Yep, it just, again, you just have to be clear, you'd be amazed how upset people get over $250.
You're right.
Even less.
The other report, in the last month, Buildings and Grounds also met with Randy Wagmeister, talked about the FFA land swap with the development group. I had hoped to have all those documents from Randy. He wasn't able, he's without a secretary now, so he's kind of running a little bit behind on that. And he wasn't able to make tonight's meeting to answer any questions of the full board. Carrie, Scott, did you have anything from our discussion that you wanted to update the board on? Or any of the other members that had questions about that? Again, my hope is Randy will be here if and when we go ahead with that, so that he can answer questions directly.
He was gonna go back and re-examine his notes from 2015, right?
Yep. If you guys don't have anything to add, then I think we're ready to move on.
Okay. Move on to item H, old business. You have some second readings of some policies.
Yep, and so,
Did we touch on the vehicle purchase recommendation? Or we want to?
same date, we had the meeting with Lane in regards to vehicle recommendations. You'll see that,
It's coming up in new business.
it's in new business.
Yep.
Um,
I just, so, I couldn't remember if it was.
Yep,
All right, then go ahead. Fine.
Yep, under policy.
yep. So the policy here, you approved the first reading last month, 503.04, good conduct rule, again aligning the appeals process with that 5-day appeals from 5 days between filing your appeal, meeting with the athletic director, and then appealing to Jason in the secondary, and same 5-day to file appeal from Jason to myself, and then ultimately students and families could ask to have that added to the agenda, and the board can consider those appeals.
There's no other questions on that. I'd entertain a motion to approve the second reading of 503.04.
So moved.
I'll second.
A motion and second to approve the second reading of policy 503.04. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carried. All right, item I, new business here. First item, Matt, consider master contract with FEH Design. So this is the contract that Matt has in front of us for his firm to essentially proceed with the work. I don't think there's any thoughts of not doing that. I think most of the discussion we're gonna have here is just centered around which way to go with the options he gave us. So we've got, and some of them might go hand in hand, where you might wanna use some savings from one to offset the other. So the two things we need to talk about and potentially make motions on are the stair option or the bridge replacement, so that's one choice there. And then with the bus barn, at this point, the two options are the pre-engineered metal building or the masonry block building. So with that in mind, right?
Yep.
Does anybody wanna talk about what they're thinking, what option they prefer? Or either, or all?
Which one
Matt, what was the delta on the
The
bridge
stair,
repair with the stair roughly?
I've got it right now at about $400,000 difference, $350,000, $400,000 difference, yeah.
Okay. And this buildings and grounds, is this the kind of the first time you've seen
the numbers on
the
it?
numbers?
Correct.
Okay. Right. So no real recommendation from.
Yeah, right.
Okay, just had to ask.
Mhm.
I guess one thing that I'll throw out there is I did like the idea of setting ourselves up for future classroom space if we needed it, with the stair addition. But with the understanding that that comes with a higher price tag, I think, just with what we're gonna use the bus barn for and where it's located, I think my initial lean would be to do a pre-engineered metal building there. So we almost have somewhat of a wash in costs, if you will. So we're, maybe an additional 100 to 150,000 net, I think we would go that route. But those are just my initial thoughts after hearing that today.
I don't disagree with you in terms of being set up for additional classrooms. My question is, when's that gonna be? I don't foresee it anytime in the even relatively near future. I mean, I don't see our enrollments going up significantly from where they are. We've been relatively stable for the last, we dipped down, we were at 2 sections before the class of 2020, which is the first section of 3. Now we've gone back up and we've stayed relatively stable and actually dipped down a little bit. I'm kind of struggling to think that we would ever add on to that, add classrooms there.
Yeah.
That's, I mean, and I don't disagree with you, I like the fact that we set it up for that. But when's that gonna be? That's my question.
Yeah, it's real hard to know.
I agree with you on the metal building for the bus barn, just where it's at, and I think it will save quite a bit of money in that aspect, and I think you can also, I think you'll have a better, an easier time finding contractors in this area to do something of that scope, and
If we did a pre-engineered metal building, would you still have the wash bay be masonry?
We could, that's a little bit uncommon, but you could, because you can fill in with anything you want to.
Or something more, even I like the lower cost of the pre-engineered steel, and I think that's very viable. I don't like the fact that it's gonna be wet in there, and
Yeah.
especially the wash bay,
Yeah.
and having that water up against the steel.
Yep, there's other options. I mean, most car washes, that kind of thing, are masonry, and then they have that FRP, that kind of embossed plastic surface on it. You can also put that on metal framing, you know, with plywood back and that kind of thing, moisture resistant rock, that kind of stuff. Yeah, so there are other options. I think if I was gonna do the metal building, I probably would go with the, some type of a wood or metal framing system inside of it, 'cause that kind of goes along with the same system. If you bring masonry in at all, you're bringing another trade and another contractor, and
Makes
it
sense.
just raises the cost.
Sure.
So that would be your most economical if you wanted to look at that. And there are ways to
Right.
do it,
I mean,
yes.
something other than just putting either open or,
Yeah,
you know, open metal, which,
Yeah.
yeah, again, like you
Right.
said, you're gonna have corrosion and rust issues.
right. Yeah, there are options to cover that up.
One thing I think the board needs to consider is the fact that we're gonna spend $2 million, and we're talking about a $300 different, or $300,000 difference, you know, 10% to 15% more for a masonry building that's gonna last us 50 or more
Probably
years.
Might double the longevity of it.
Or a metal building that we're anticipating is gonna be 20 to 30 years. That's $2 million now, that who knows what that number's gonna be 25, 30 years from now versus double that longevity of that building. Right now, for $2.5 to $2.75 million. It's a big number for either building, but the longevity of that building and future Central Lyon boards and community having to, you know, bond again against, say, 20 years from now, 30 years from now versus 50 or 60 years from now.
So I may be mistaken, like, a metal building, I mean, what I'm picturing is similar to what, like, if someone was gonna build a house today, like I mean, it's got wood inside, the shop is often separate, it's got metal or steel
Yeah, that's a
siding,
different type.
correct?
That's a different type. So there's a, I would call it a pole building, that's a
Yeah.
not pre-manufactured wood structure, tin covering, like a barn, or, there are a lot of those structures out there.
Right.
That's what
And
we
you can
currently
use
have.
them, and that's what you currently have. The pre-engineered metal building is a step up from that. That's all metal structure, still got the tin covering and roof and that kind of thing. It's a little bit longer longevity than that, and then you've got the masonry one. So it's a little bit different than just the wood framed one. It's similar, but a little bit
I'm just
different.
struggling with it only being like a 20-year lifespan, I feel like these buildings that are going up are, I mean, I don't know.
Well, they also don't have 10 buses going in and out of them every day, and that's probably the biggest difference, is the use of it and the amount of use of it. But again, pre-engineered metal building, a lot of districts have them for bus barns. That's, you know, it's appropriate. I think you're having the right,
Do you have any thoughts on that? You're out there and
I'm more concerned about that wash bay with metal. That's just my opinion. I know it's a bus garage and I know where it's located, but, you know, I still want it done right and last. You know, I'm more for block, but
So is there a reason why you're feeling to do the metal versus the block besides cost?
Just in my experience with projects, I don't think a block building's appropriate. We've, as Matt mentioned, with the FRP will take care of the wash bay issue. We did that in a gen plant, and community down in southern Iowa, it was downtown, so it ended up being a block building, but we did put FRP in there to cover up the block from the inside, but, you know, this conversation happens all the time. It's not uncommon to.
no, this is the right conversation.
Yeah.
This is the same conversation. It's cost versus durability and longevity, you know? you may be in a little bit different position that you actually have some money. Most people's conversation doesn't go that way. They don't have that initial layout, so that decision gets made for them. You're actually in a good spot because you get to discuss it.
And even if it is, I don't wanna say only $300,000, but I just think I'd prefer to use that money somewhere else when it comes to bus barn. It was here on campus at the school, and we had some different aesthetics issues to talk about. And I think that probably swayed my opinion, but I just
So
think
do you feel
Grand
like
Unit's
the
pretty good.
longevity isn't that much of a difference then?
I don't wanna counter what Matt says, but I think we can get more than 20 years out of it.
Well, we've got how many years out of what we
Yeah.
have right now, so I can understand
Yeah.
that, but it is probably something that should have been replaced.
For sure.
Well, but at the same time, it's really, as Matt said, you can have 8 or 10 buses going in and out of it every day in a much different fashion than they go in and out of it today. You have a sliding door, one sliding door at the end of the building, and every bus goes in and out there. You can have 8 doors going up and down, 2, 3, 4 times a day. That will be different, and that will be different on the wear and tear of the building. Now, that's not to say that I don't think that a metal building will be strong enough to handle that, but I think that's gonna be, and I thought about that too. I'm like, well, why couldn't you just build a machine shed, okay, a pole building? But the big difference there that I kinda came to the conclusion of is, those doors going up and down, and buses going in and out, you're gonna have a lot of wear and tear on that building. You're gonna ding it up, and I just don't think that's the right way to go there. Question for you, Matt, for the metal building, does that get lined on the inside with steel, like steel sheeting,
Yes,
like
you
on the
can.
outside?
Yep. The,
Or
most
Can you
of them
describe
is,
what you're thinking?
yeah, most of the time you see just the insulation on the inside, and you see it from the ceiling. It's called bag and sag. It's kind of, draped up there. You can cover that with tin on the inside. There's lots of things you can cover with. Any material you can think of, you can cover it with. In this case, when you have so much vehicle traffic, I'm not sure a tin is gonna hold up very well. It is gonna get run into, and it is gonna get, beat up and that kind of thing. So, you're absolutely right. When I say a 20 or 25-year building, it'll sit there for 50 years. You have that. That's what happens to them. That's when it takes so much more time and effort. I mean, Steve's got to deal with holes in the tin and, drainage issues underneath it. All of that stuff has taken his time and effort for however many years it's been, and you just wouldn't have that with the block building. There are issues with block buildings too. It's just a different type of thing. So when I look at these things for a school district, it's different than I'm looking at it for an industrial building or a farm building or even some kind of a business. This is a lot of traffic. The bus drivers are not always pros. It's just a different type of a situation. So my recommendation for you is the block building because of my experience in doing them and with them. But the discussion that you're having is exactly right on. It's the same one that everybody has.
Matt, with the block building, you said you had traditional, what I think of as traditional roof trusses.
Yeah,
along
right.
With asphalt shingle.
Yeah, that's what we're thinking. Shingles, you can get a 25 or 30-year roof out of a shingled roof system. Anybody can put those on. You don't need any special. So that's a matter of, wood truss and plywood and shingles is easy for anybody to repair or do if they want to. That was part of it too. And the difference in the cost came down because we could use that system. I didn't have to use a metal, joist or truss system. Easier to get, easier to put up, not as heavy, all that kind of stuff. So it's a bit of a hybrid that I kind of have in my mind for you all as the level up from the metal building.
Scott, you have any thoughts? Not to put you on the spot or anything.
Oh, I really don't know for sure. I go back and forth all the time. I do think, we'll get more life out of it, but like Matt said, at the end of 50 years, if we have the same issue as we have right now, and then it costs $5 million to put up the bus barn, we're better off, but who knows the future? But I don't know. I keep going back and forth. With 300,000 is, in savings. I, honestly, I do like a little bit, if we go back to the stairwell, I do kinda like the stairwell a little bit. Cause, yeah, if we're just putting a Band-Aid on the bridge again, 20 years we're gonna be doing the same thing, and then it's gonna be $300,000-400,000 to fix, and then we've got stairwell paid for, in my opinion. But, and plus with Steve's recommendation that it helps with kid
Traffic.
traffic, you know.
Mhm.
I kinda like that idea, but the bus barn, I go back and forth, I can, you know, the metal building, I could easily be in favor of.
So Amy, Carrie, on the stair, bridge, you guys have any thoughts on that?
I feel very similarly. I like the enclosed stairwell. I know it costs more, but I think it will look nicer and it will be, I think, a more permanent solution than the bridge.
It seems like there's kind of multiple reasons to do the enclosed stairwell. It's not just, just because of the bridge situation the way it is now. There's just the different reasons we've said, so. But like budget-wise, and then the amount of money that we're planning to spend with our save bond and all that, how does that, or do we still feel comfortable with the numbers with that extra? I know there is some wiggle room, so having.
Yeah,
a
I
little
mean,
extra-
all the projects that we have here have significant contingencies, and then the numbers that were in the study versus what I shared with you on the spreadsheet also have been inflated by another factor of 10%. So I've tried to, pad that, in addition to the fact that we added an additional $1 million to the notice, a $6.5 million public hearing for a save bond. So I feel comfortable with wherever we go with this, whether it's the stairwell, that's an additional $400,000, and the masonry building, that's $300,000 more. Plus, we've got our flexibility for future, if indeed everything comes back really high, we can continue to revisit this if those bids come very high for the stairwell, or the bids come high for a metal building and we want to look at something different. Just like you rejected the first bridge proposal, we can reject any of those bids as they should come in if we're not comfortable with the total dollar amount.
That's a good point too.
And that's where, between now and when Matt kind of finalizes his estimates, we need to meet with Matt Gillespie, whether that's the finance committee or the buildings and grounds committee, to really dial in all of those estimates that we have right now and what that is ultimately gonna look like for all of our future maintenance needs and transportation needs, to make sure that we're being responsible.
So let's do this. I know it's been a while since we used the Robert's rules and the amendment feature. So if I can just get a motion and a second to approve the master contract with FEH Design, then we will amend it accordingly with some votes on either or and see where we end up there, if that's okay.
Sounds good.
So you want a motion to approve the master contract with FEH?
Yep.
I'll
And
make
then
that motion.
Okay,
Second.
okay, so we have a motion and second to approve the master contract with FEH. So now what I would like to do is, let's discuss amendments. So if someone would like to amend that motion to include the design of a block building for the bus barn, or pre-engineered metal building with the bus barn, if that's the one we want to tackle first, let's do that. We'll just keep building that tree till we get to the final motion. So let's start with the bus barn. So second, and go from there.
It's not feasible to bid this out both ways, is it? And set
Yes,
one?
it is, but you're gonna spend more money with me. I've got to design both of them essentially then. So you could do that. There isn't an easier way really because there's so many modifications with each system. And it's a difficult alternate. When we do alternates, we usually try to keep them to one trade or two trades instead of everybody. So it's a difficult one, but it is possible.
Would it be different contractors you think that would be bidding on?
It would. Most general contractors have agreements with metal building companies. So they would represent a certain metal building company. And if we did that, we would pre-qualify some of them. We would know who the contractors are and look at their systems ahead of time, so there's not any significant differences. And there really aren't. You know, they're all pretty much the same. But it would be a little bit different process. So when we wrote the spec for it, we would pre-approve A, B, C, D, knowing that those contractors are someone that we have around the area and they rep that product. And then we would kind of design around that. So it's a little bit different design. The concrete block building, any mason can do the same because that's all done on site. So that's a little bit easier to do.
One thought that I had, and coming into this, I was not in favor of doing a block building, because to me, there was too much of a delta between a steel building versus a block building. To me, there was somewhere between $500,000 and $700,000 that come the numbers that I had seen, based on the high number to the block building to the lower number to steel building. We were $750,000 potentially. To me, bringing it down, bringing the cost of the block building down, I think with the change to the roof structure you're talking about mostly, Matt, that brings, if your estimate is within $300,000 of a steel building, to me, I think that's $300,000 well spent. And I'll be the first one to admit, I was opposed to going block building because of the cost. What ballpark were we at with the block? What's your estimate now?
Well, I haven't done all the site work, but in the study, it was 2.5 to 2 million. That was the difference. Now I'm at roughly 2.5 and 2.2. And that's not got everything in there, but yeah. So it did shrink down a little bit, and I think what you mentioned, the roof structure and some of that was a big part of it, that it changed.
And I do like the longevity aspect of a block building. I do think you'll get more than 20 years out of a steel building. I do understand your thought about how does it fit into that area. Speaking of which, I'm kind of thinking out loud here, what is the kids club building? What's the exterior of that building look like?
It's just,
Looks like a house.
yeah,
Is it residential style?
residential construction.
Welcoming,
Yeah. Siding.
Mm-hmm.
I would say more of a welcoming atmosphere because of the clientele.
It's not a commercial industrial.
Correct.
looking building.
Correct. It's families dropping off
Get over there
little.
a lot.
Mhm.
So, from that standpoint and the fact that we're gonna have a wash bay in it, to me, block building seems to be much more durable than steel, even if you align it on the inside. I put up a steel building when I was a maintainer, we put up a building like that, I think how you're describing. And it's a very nice building. It doesn't really look that nice on the inside though, to be honest with you. You know, the sag, saggy insulation, I just wasn't a big fan of it. And you don't have anything between open air and the
Yeah, that's-
insulation.
Yeah, in that
That's it.
case, that's it, yeah.
To me, a block building just seems to be much more finished. So I guess I'm talking myself in anyways.
You're putting up a
You
great
might be
fight with
talking
yourself.
to you.
Yeah, I mean, you really are.
Internal struggle.
It's enjoying.
See each shoulder here.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
Exactly.
and everything you're saying is absolutely reasonable, so
Yeah.
that's okay for people to hear out loud.
So again, like Scott said, I go back and forth, I do, but.
You may have just talked me into it. That makes me feel
That wasn't my intent. But that's, I mean, for a $300,000 difference, which is about 15%, that would lead me toward maybe not spending the money on the enclosed stairway, however. So that's kind of where I'm at, I guess. 'Cause I would lean toward the block bill. I'm more concerned about the longevity of that than I probably am about the bridge.
Is that a motion for an amendment?
Okay, fine. Motion to move forward with the block building.
The bus barn.
Or the bus barn.
Give it a second. Okay, so we have a motion and a second.
Who was the second? I'm sorry.
Scott.
Thank you.
For an amendment to include the bus barn as a block building. All in favor of that amendment, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye.
Aye.
Okay, that amendment carries 3-2. So we are back to the original motion as amended, which is a master contract with FEH, including the design of a block building or bus barn. Let's regroup here back to the stair bridge issue.
You've done majority of the work on the bridge already, correct?
It's ready to send out again. If we keep it the same way that it was, which was repairing what was there.
Right.
Right.
You have preliminary blueprints, would it take much more work? Is this something that, I mean, realistically, can we bid this one? Because it's two really different aspects of fixing it. Is this something that we can actually
Do an alternate on.
do an alternate on, bid both of them?
Yeah, you can. It's just more work for
Fees
us.
to you.
Fees, that's right, yeah.
You can throw those fees in if you want.
Yeah, that's the thing, you know, is it a matter of, you know, because mine are estimates. You know, it's not a bid. And
Well,
circumstances are still changing, and so my best estimate right now is that's the difference.
But we
If,
do have a bid on
yeah, and I think
So I
that,
don't
I
know
think
that,
that might
so-
actually go down a little bit from my discussions with him, and if we get more bidders on it, and there's more to do. I don't know that for sure, but I think it might go down a little bit. But the issue of an alternate, that is an alternate that every trade is involved in again. And I got everybody to do the alternate. So by the measure of an alternate, it's not a good alternate. But if the point is to see the actual cost, and that's gonna be what you base your decision on, then that's valuable information. If you can't make that decision now, but you will spend money with me to do it, and it's, as alternates go, it's not a good one.
So roughly $400,000 difference. $400,000 difference right now between the
That's what I believe,
stair and the bridge.
yes,
Yep.
yep.
And just so we're clear, since we did do the bus barn amendment first, that shouldn't sway our decision on this
Right.
part too. Any additional discussion? Or an amendment?
$400,000 is a lot.
Well, it's approximately $600,000 to do it versus 200.
Yeah,
Estimates
so
anyway.
it's 3 times as much.
And if we're thinking about, if it's 20 years from now, when we would end up adding on, we think the life of it maybe is, if we maybe would think that we would have to do some more repairs to the bridge 20 years from now, we'll take it out and add on the classrooms.
Mhm.
I don't think that that's wasted.
Right.
The bridge repair, I don't think that's wasted. It's a, probably not an ideal, aspect. Just because of the multiple things, you gotta continually do some more do repairs on it, maintenance on it. It's a pain to have to scoop it off, I get it. I can pay a lot of labor scooping snow for $400,000.
And up until 2 years ago, we were using the tractor on the concrete, right? It's really
Safety
been
right
hand,
now.
hand shoveled because of our concerns with the
Once we
And if we
deterioration.
do those repairs, would we be comfortable using the tractor?
We would use the tractor again.
Okay.
Yep.
How much does that bridge get used?
Really, it's the it's
Just
the
the
exit
effort.
at the end of the day for the 7th and 8th graders that are going out that, there's not a lot of kids that go out that.
So if it's a stairwell that goes downstairs, will they go out that door and come back up? or
Nope,
will
they'll
they-
walk around to the weight room door, like,
They go out that door?
It would be almost a
But they'll use that
repurpose.
during school.
Yeah, it'd
Like,
be a-
But
use
you'll,
this
right,
stair
you'll get
during
more
school.
use out of it during the school.
during the school day,
Extra.
we would
Use
use it
a
like
lot.
we've never used it
Right.
before. You know, we would, during passing periods, it could become really a one-way, you know, you go up one stair and down the other way. So it's more efficient.
Do you think everybody would do that though, if you're closer on the west end to go to those stairs?
No,
Free for all.
Those kids are gonna go, they're gonna go. They're closer. In my opinion. If we do.
Is it a big issue now? I mean, is it too congested or anything, or is it?
we don't know any different. I mean, it meets the need, and right now, in the last, again, 2 years, we've had more kids in the 7th through 12th grade than we've ever had before, and it hasn't been a problem.
I'll be, upfront, the reason that you all asked me to look at it was because you were gonna have to spend 200,000 instead of 75. That's the reason that we looked at it, so it wasn't the fact that it didn't work, and it wasn't the fact that it wasn't okay, it was just, again, a matter of dollars, if you're gonna spend that much, maybe it made sense. This is way above, and take it or leave it, that's just, I wanted to remember where we started from too, it might help.
If we combine it with the bus barn, for example, is there a possibility that 200,000 comes down to something less than that?
Well, the intention for all the projects is to combine them into one project, so a general contractor has access to it. So I think anything that we can do to enhance the general contractor's work on the project will definitely help the cost. Because when it was just the bridge, they had nothing to do. They were gonna put it back together, but they were waiting for people to bring stuff in. Now they've got other things to do, and I think it would definitely be advantageous.
For one, that'll be more attractive to more.
Right, yeah, bigger the contract, yeah.
I'm kind of leaning toward repairing it. I think there's nice attributes to having it enclosed, but for the cost, I'm having a hard time justifying that.
Is that a motion?
Yeah, I'll make that a motion.
Second.
Okay, so we have a motion and a second to amend the main motion that was previously amended. My tongue twisted anybody yet? So the amendment that is on the floor is to do the bridge repair, so we'll vote on that amendment. We have a motion and a second, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. Okay, that amendment carries then 4-1. Okay, so we are back to the main motion with 2 amendments. So we have approval of the master contract with FEH, which will now include a block design for the bus barn and the bridge repair. We already have a motion and second, so that's already built in. Matt, I'm gonna vote no, just because I don't agree with the expenditures, but that is in no way a reflection upon you.
Understood,
You're doing great work.
Thank you.
Keep it up.
appreciate it,
We know we got the right person for the job. So,
thank you.
with that in mind, all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? Aye. That motion carries 3-2. You got it, Jackie? Okay,
Just review the minutes.
yes, and we're recorded on YouTube too. so
You'll
we can
be
go
reading
back,
them so
right?
you can correct them.
There you go.
Yep.
Okay, we will
Thanks,
move
Matt.
on.
Thank you, everybody.
Thanks, Matt.
Thank you for your work. I know it's difficult.
So we'll move on to item number 2, consider proposals from DGR for parking lots and athletic complex projects. I have a conflict of interest here, so I'm gonna turn this over to Dave and let you guys talk about it.
Just a question though, Andy. Do you have any expertise, maybe I would ask, in the work that is being proposed?
No. I'm an electrical.
That's what I thought. Just wanted-
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. Okay, so on the table, well, Brent, I'll let you walk through it.
Yeah, so similar to what we discussed with Matt with FEH, but now utilizing DGR as kind of the project manager. They put 3 proposals together. The first proposal there includes concrete paving of both the high school parking lot, including the north kind of alleyway and the activity center. And then they also have the kind of sidewalk and accessibility from the concession stand to Story Street and the visiting concession area included in that. You'll notice that the field, football field track is consistent for each one. But the middle proposal there is asphalt, so kind of milling away what we have right now and replacing with full depth of asphalt versus the third option, which is just not doing anything with the base, just kind of addressing some of the potholes and some of the erosion that's currently happened, but it would just be an overlay. So that's the difference in the proposals. My recommendation, I think the Buildings and Grounds Committee, our conversation has been moving forward with a concrete for all the parking lots instead of that asphalt. And so that estimated cost is $1,081,000 for full concrete. If you did the asphalt, where we would address the base and it would be $800,000, so there's about a $300,000 difference. If you just did the overlay, 5.5, roughly.
How thick is the base currently? Is it 2 inches or is it 4 inches?
It's at least 4, if not 6.
So in the full depth asphalt, did I read that's 4 inch?
4 inches, yep,
And the overlay
Concrete.
would be how much?
2
2?
inches.
And we did an overlay on the elementary staff parking lot, correct? A couple years ago, 3, 4 years ago, whatever it was.
Correct.
And have we noticed any deterioration of that? It's been good so far?
Yep.
Okay, good.
You know, what we've eliminated there is any of the drop off and pickup that you had previously on the west side of the building there. So everything now happens on Story or on 12th for the buses. So it doesn't get the same amount of wear and tear as maybe it did before.
Sure. So the one consistent thing in this is the football field sidewalk.
Correct. Because that would all be concrete work.
Yep. Did that include, that does not include the track repairs, does it?
It doesn't, so we've got Fisher Track coming to give us an estimate,
Okay, so we don't have that information yet.
but we're using, again, what was in the study as our current estimate from FEH on that.
And remind me where that's, is that in these numbers?
Nope, So that's, if I go back to, you know, this spreadsheet that I sent you,
Yep.
the concrete, everything in concrete is what I've estimated in that box right there.
Yep.
965.
Yep.
And then the sports complex has the 116,000 plus another, what, 209, 200 and 300 and some $1,000 for track repairs, track repairs. Yep.
But what you're looking at right now is not including the football.
But our budget,
What you're
based upon,
approving.
again,
Okay, so that number
What's the-
7 there, $450,000,
Correct.
take out the 116 out of there, so you're left with 350.
Yeah.
Okay.
Does that include then, it's been a while since we've, I remember talking about this, but does that, do we have to do any retaining wall or anything down by the football field?
yep, so
And
Gary,
that's included in
that's in the DGR.
350,
That's
not
included.
included in this, right?
No, it's in the
It's in the
one-
116, right?
Yep,
Yep.
in the 116.
Yeah, that's what I thought.
So, I know that we've talked about the track before, and that, so it's 6-lane right now.
Mhm.
And, I mean, we don't have a desire to make that an 8-lane at the moment or anything, but with the sidewalk that we're putting there, does it limit us to, you know, if,
Yes, it does.
so
So
then-
if you wanted
And so
to
does the
do,
grandstand.
so does the visitors bleachers
Yeah.
and the track, or and the tennis courts and anything there, if we went to an 8-lane track or a field turf football field, you know, it's gonna be in the multi-million-dollar renovation, because it's gonna be, any of these sidewalks that we do from this point forward are gonna have to be torn back out.
If you remember correctly, in that, kind of that very first one we talked about, that maybe was the second one where we said, but if we get to that, this will seem like peanuts in the grand scope of what will need to be spent to redo the
And
whole
that's- I
complex.
do think that's quite a few years out, if,
I don't think it's in our lifetime.
I'm not concerned about spending $116,000 now and then rip it out, however far down the road for it in place of that multi-million-dollar project.
That was kind of the discussion, that's what I wanted to remind you.
That's just my personal opinion.
So I guess, can anyone speak to the longevity of like these options, or not really? Like, do we know how long?
So the 4-inch asphalt that you have out here was put in 2002, so it's 20 years. Similar type of kind of length. You're talking concrete parking lot, you're talking about 50 years instead of 20 to 25 for the middle option. If you did just a 2-inch overlay of what you have here, you're looking another 10 to 15, so you're about halving each one of these.
Have there been any concerns raised about the underlying base of the parking lots?
The only concern that Gary noted is we have a separation between the first row right along the curb, the second row. That's where the asphalt, the first row of asphalt and the second row of asphalt, where they
talking about
met.
here?
Yep.
Okay.
That's where our greatest concern is for kind of a erosion of the subsurface. The other subsurface is really solid in Gary's estimation, his analysis of it. So even if we did the middle one, we would need to address the kind of erosion at points where those two met. Either between the first and second row and the second and the third row.
So some points, we certainly will have to address at least, may or may not be a big concern, may have to be some relatively minor repair, we hope anyway, it sounds
Yep.
like.
But that's included in the price?
Yep.
I mean, the fact that he would have to address this, okay, that's not in addition to.
An option, I would think, is, for me, given that, and if we would choose to go concrete out here, does that mean we have to do concrete in the activity center as well? For me, the activity center, my impression anyway, is it gets much less traffic than it does out here.
Much less student traffic, but I would say the after-school traffic for whether it's middle school pickup or drop-off for practices, or the evening rec, kind of elementary, right now volleyball practice, or in the winter basketball practice is probably greater in that kind of circle. But as far as the number of vehicles that are just parked there,
And would that difference with that size of area be that much different? Is that, I mean,
he hasn't broken out the. It's just a total square footage.
Well, the activity center is broken out separate from the high school, is that what you're asking, Carrie?
yeah,
Yeah, those are broken out separately.
okay. I had a reboot because my computer locked up, so.
So the page 3 has the activity centers kind of broken down if you wanted to do kind of mix and match like you just did, like you were talking about, Carrie. $660 concrete.
So the AC is 207 versus 143.
Correct.
For the full depth,
For the full.
and
or-
overlay is 89.
So what are you thinking, the overlay, the 2-inch overlay?
That's the direction I'm leaning at this point. And
But
part of the reason
maybe
for that.
concrete,
Hmm?
Put concrete here, or?
I would do, at this point, my thinking is overlay on everything. Purely from an upfront cost standpoint. Partially because we spent a little bit more on the bus building, frankly.
Yeah.
Not only tonight did we make that decision, but it was more, I think it's more than what we initially came into it thinking. So.
Actually, what you approved tonight is what was in, what we were thinking ahead of time.
You're right, it is. It is about the same amount, but.
Because we didn't add the stairwell, which was an additional $400,000. Yep. So if you did,
If I remember right when we were talking about this, there used to be a bigger difference between the asphalt and the concrete. But the price of asphalt has increased more
Mhm.
at a higher rate than the cost of concrete, so there's not quite, is that right? Am I
Mhm.
remembering that right? So
so if you just did the asphalt, it's $364. If you just did the 2-inch overlay, it's $364. And then if you did a combination, I can figure out whatever you want for a combination.
I think 364,
It's just a 2-inch overlay at both the high school parking lot and the activity
Oh,
center.
because, yeah, you have to track out the 116 for the footballs.
Yep.
Field sidewalk. Gotcha.
You know, the buildings and grounds, if we're just gonna do a 2-inch overlay, you know, the original conversation was, if you're, that north end alleyway is where we do have a significant traffic. You know, he didn't, you know, just break it down for concrete for that section, so,
Yeah, we talked about that, just having that kind of road
Yep.
area be concrete, because that's,
You talk between like
Right
the
here.
shop and the
yep,
football field?
But all the way to the stop sign probably, right?
from stop sign to stop
Yeah,
sign.
from both
Yeah.
stop signs, yeah.
It's a street whether we like it or not.
I agree.
Yeah.
So,
And that's where the greatest deterioration, the biggest potholes in the parking lot are at.
I can see that. That gets a lot of traffic morning and afternoon.
All night,
All
Yeah.
weekend.
all
I'm
weekend.
sure. Yeah.
Yep.
It's not true.
maybe the city would chip in some money.
I don't think so.
Nope.
No, I'm sure not. Okay, so do we need to go back and look at that as an option of doing just that in concrete? Or where, where are we at here? I mean, do we,
Can we make a motion to approve that and then, or not? I mean,
You can table it, and we can have a special meeting.
even without the cost, you need the cost first. you said.
I don't know that we do, I mean, I think we can get close, just from a general understanding. So let me ask this, are we all on board with the football field sidewalk at $116,000 doing that project?
Yeah.
Yes.
Yes.
Okay,
Yeah.
I am as well.
Yes.
So I think we have agreement there. And we can do these as separate motions or come to one agreement. The activities, should we do them, the activity center parking lot? Again, I'm still,
Did Justin put them together? How accurate?
Gary
does he-
Kirk.
Or Gary did, sorry.
Yep,
How accurate does he think he is on these numbers, like?
yeah, he,
Accurate.
very accurate, yeah,
So it's not like we get bids in and there's gonna be.
yeah, he's confident. You know, going back to our study here, I know FEH is not DGR, but just the north drive in concrete, they had estimated at the high end, $177,000 just for concrete of that driveway,
Stop sign to stop sign.
stop sign to stop sign.
kind of going back to Matt's conversation about different skills and different crews doing that, does that mean you have different crews doing asphalt versus concrete?
Yes.
Does that make it more expensive than you would be otherwise?
Yeah, if we do asphalt, like you said, here in the parking lots, it's probably, like you said, a different contractor for the football field track work that we would undertake, so that could be higher.
It would obviously decrease the cost from the asphalt as well, just the number of square feet. I mean, that they would
Mm-hmm.
be resurfacing too, so.
Right.
comment about the asphalt or the concrete.
I think, like we talked about with the bus barn, the costs of this are going in one direction. And, you know, we've budgeted for this, granted, there's a significant difference, but 50 years at today's cost versus 10 years if we do a 2-inch overlay, you know, again, we're not gonna have the flexibility with a save bond. You know, yes, we're gonna have the weight room and the office spaces coming off that in 5 years, but that's another bond that we're gonna have to look at to be
Yeah.
able to do it,
It's kind of how,
versus if we do it all now, we're capturing our dollars and still able to cover our reoccurring maintenance costs. That's why I recommended the concrete now. You do it once, package it all together, and we don't have to do it in phases or 10 or 20 years from now, do it again at a cost that's gonna be significantly greater.
I guess I kind of had that same thought with the fact that with the save bond and those funds, just accessing them now. For that, but. I don't know, anybody else?
Amy, what do you think?
I mean, I'm thinking that I don't feel that it's necessary to continue on all these projects to borrow expenses from 30 or 40 years down the road. I mean, I don't think we have to do, I guess that's my opinion. I'm thinking the overlay with concrete along the north driveway.
So 2-inch overlay over
Yep,
both
that
the
would
high
be-
school lot and the
That would be my.
activity center.
But put concrete along the drive from
The north
sidewalk
drive.
to sidewalk, or from stop sign to stop
Yes.
sign. That's the direction I'm leaning as well. Scott, where are you at?
Probably that direction. Just, you know, we've been talking about this for so long and put a lot of hours into it. And now here we are adding it all together and it's a lot of dollars all at once. I don't know. At this point in time. I don't know, cause this one out here was, you said 4 inches and it's been 20 years. See, that's what
We're, yeah, if it's just a 2-inch overlay,
we're gonna be doing it again in 10 years.
or it could be 20, I don't know.
Right, but
I've been on the board for 10, I know we haven't done one in 10 years.
But we're probably 3 or 4 years.
This one out here has needed something to be done, some investment.
Yep.
Either some major repairs or
Yep.
an overlay.
I
Agreed.
hit the pothole every day, so just noting there's some
Alright.
repairs.
Kinda like the bus barn.
Yep.
Passed. So we can do it one or a couple different ways probably. We can take one motion to make one proposal for everything, or we can do them as separate ones. Do the sidewalk as one, activity center parking lot as one, and the high school parking lot as a separate one. Or if someone wants to make a motion, we can act on that motion. think you almost have to do, to keep the project similar, maybe we do have to do the two parking lots the same. If we do,
Yeah,
if we do the activity center in asphalt, for example, and do the high school parking lot in cement or vice versa, you've got two different very different projects there.
well, but if we're talking about doing that concrete, we're
We're
throwing
doing
concrete
different
into
projects.
it regardless. I think I still build that concrete for it all, but. for
I'd
the-
like to see concrete out in this parking lot, just with the amount of use that it gets on a daily basis. Not just for school, but activities and everything like that. And I could, I could go with an asphalt at the activity center. I guess you can tell us in 10 or 15 years
And so
of
that,
which one we chose
Yes,
is
correct.
correct.
Yeah.
But, because I don't know if, it's a lot of money up front, but if it saves the district money down the line, I'm okay with that. But because we've got some experience with having this asphalt out here, plus we just redid the elementary teacher parking lot not so many years ago, and that's held up with limited or less traffic because of the drop-off area, so.
Yep.
But I think this is not gonna change in 10, 15 years, we're gonna be doing something again. If we don't do concrete.
So if someone cares to make a motion, we can.
You want a motion on each of them separately? Or what's your preference? I mean, the football field sidewalk,
Football field
Obviously.
sidewalk, I think is clear, so let's do that one, get
yeah,
that
that
out
one's
of the way.
easy. I'll make a motion to approve concrete for a new football field sidewalk from the visitor side to the, for ADA
Story
access, I guess.
Street, yep.
Yes, Story Street to the concessions.
I'll second.
A motion second to approve the football field sidewalk as noted. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. So now let's talk about the activity center parking lot. And maybe they still do somewhat go hand in hand. I think we have consensus that we would, at a minimum, we would do stop sign to stop sign in concrete.
Are you talking?
That's in the high
activity?
school parking lot.
And yeah, it's high school parking lot out here.
Okay.
Oh, yeah,
So
I thought you were
wouldn't-
talking about activities center.
I'm sorry, in the high school parking lot, stop sign to stop sign on the north side of the parking lot, doing that in concrete. I think we're all on board with that. Do we go beyond that in more concrete and do the rest of the parking lot in concrete?
I said it, so I'll make a motion. I say we make a motion to concrete the whole high school parking lot.
You want to go just that far and leave out the activity center?
And without that center,
Okay.
because we can make a motion separate on that one.
Yeah. Okay,
So I'll second.
okay, we have a motion and second to do the high school parking lot in concrete. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Aye. So, Amy, you voted yes?
I said yes.
Okay, okay, so that motion passes, so we'll do the high school in concrete, now the activity center. In asphalt or concrete, and the difference in cost is $200,000, call it, for concrete versus $143 for a 4-inch complete full depth versus $89 for an overlay. Right? Yep.
Correct.
And that had a 2-inch overlay at the same,
No.
never, when was that?
So,
That has not had any
There's
overlay.
Nothing for a long time.
Yeah, so I think
Okay.
the same time that the high school lot was done in like 2002.
When it went from,
Yep, from gravel. It's the same time that they did.
so that was when?
2003 to 4.
Yeah.
Was this year that I arrived.
And the condition of that,
I would say is the same condition as the high school lot.
So it's not like, so it's kind of showing that it doesn't necessarily get less use than if it's similar.
Correct.
Well, this has had
Does the fitness center, like, would they contribute to any of that, or no?
They
That's
lease
not-
it
They
from
lease
us.
Oh, they do, sure.
So going from overlay to concrete, you're talking about $118,000.
Correct.
It doubles the cost.
Doubles
It
the
doubles
cost.
and doubles. I would think, this is just my 2 cents, I think if we're gonna do anything there, I think we, just looking at the price of 90,000 versus 140,000 for the asphalt. Me personally, I would do at a minimum, would do the full depth asphalt, in my opinion. You know, if we wanna save 60,000 and put that towards a different project.
So if this is all concrete, and then we have that
It's asphalt.
asphalt,
Mhm.
I feel like we're almost gonna save money from contractors by coming to just all do the same at this point, because
yeah.
if we're putting,
I-
you know.
Yeah, I wonder if those,
That's I mean, that activity center parking lot is a small parking lot.
It's a very, yeah,
To get an asphalt contractor in here to do that, it may very well be more than this.
that's what I
right,
feel
because it's so
like.
small.
So for me, even the difference between a 2-inch overlay and the concrete, yeah, I mean, it's only $116,000. But even from a, you know, from the full depth asphalt to concrete is $60,000, $64,000 estimate. It's kind of halfway between the two. I think if you're gonna do one, you might as well do both, in my opinion.
So I'll make a motion for the activity center to concrete.
I'll second.
A motion second to have the activity center parking lot done in concrete. All in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. About time. Jason, would you go get your hand, please? I'm not complaining or anything like that. It takes time to spend money sometimes.
Yeah, it does. Yep. So, welcome back, Amy.
Hi.
Have a good nap.
What?
Have a good nap. So a decision was made to do everything in concrete.
Okay.
So I'll turn the meeting back over to you.
All right, thank you. So we're on item number 3, correct?
Yes.
Okay, consider resolution fixing date for a hearing of proposed issuance of approximately 6.5 million school infrastructure sales, service, and use tax revenue bonds.
So again, based upon everything that you guys approved tonight, and that I included in the, kind of the budget, you know, that we're estimating the save bond is gonna be around $4.8 million. This is well and above that, and we need to, again, we can always go lower if and when the bids come in, but we can't go above whatever we would advertise and hold a public hearing for.
So 4.8 is where we're at now with everything that's
Yep.
approved and everything.
Estimates anyway.
Yeah.
I don't know a wrench, but I am gonna be traveling home that night, so I don't know what time I will be home for sure, but it'll probably be after 7:30.
That's
So
fine, as
I
long as we
can
have,
call in.
as long as we have a quorum.
but I
Yep.
can-
That is
while
okay.
I'm driving.
The hearing is just a hearing. The action on the save bond, if you're able to make it, most likely is not gonna happen until after 7:30. Now, like tonight, our reports didn't get done until, 7:30, until Matt started talking, so. Otherwise, we can amend the hearing if you wanted to look at a different date other than, we haven't published anything. You know, if you wanted to amend it to the 17th or the following Monday, or if you wanted to go on a Wednesday.
Don't look at me. I think we can move forward on the
Yeah.
12th, but
I
Yep.
can call, we can keep it, I can call
we
in.
have to
And
just see everybody else's
and it's
schedules.
possible that I might be back if everything goes according to plan.
Sounds good.
Okay, so what do you need from us here, Jackie? Just a motion and
Just a
second to approve the resolution?
I'm gonna do a roll call vote when it's time.
Roll call, okay. So I entertain a motion and second to approve that resolution. When you're ready?
I'll make that motion to approve the resolution.
Second.
And a roll call vote, Jans.
Aye.
Postma.
Aye.
Harder.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Coop.
Aye. Okay, moving on to item number 4. Consider resolution fixing the date for a public hearing on the proposed use of saved revenue for an athletic facility infrastructure project.
So because the football field is not physically attached to the building, we also need to have a public hearing. So the community can weigh in on the proposed, or ask questions on the proposed sidewalks at the football field. And that is different from when you did that last, or whenever, even when we started the softball project, that law was passed in 2019, so. Anytime we should do anything with athletic complexes, we'll have to have its own separate hearing.
So then is that separate from the 4.8? Or is that including?
It's included.
Them?
Yep.
Yeah.
It's all included.
Entertain a motion and second when you're ready.
Motion to approve.
I'll second.
A motion and second to approve the resolution as stated.
Kempke. Roll call vote, Jans.
Aye.
Postma.
Aye.
Harder.
Aye.
Davis.
Aye.
Coop.
Moving on to item number 5, consider quote for Ford van from Papic Motors for $50,865.
Again, in the packet, you have quotes for this, what would be a brand-new 2023 Ford Transit van as listed and is recommended, but also in the packet, you had some used vans, Ford and Chevy varieties. Again, Buildings and Grounds Committee met with Lane and had a conversation about the fleet in general. And you guys had requested the quotes on the different used options. You know, the quote is obviously for the new vehicle. There would be a significant waiting period for us to receive it. You know, they estimated at least a year, maybe up to 18 months to receive that versus those used vehicles that obviously would be available immediately. But again, our fleet, the way it currently sits, whether it's a year or 18 months, we feel like we can still meet our needs, transporting primarily activity trips for athletics and fine arts and the like. Anything else to add, Carrie or Scott?
No, we just kind of wanted to get an idea of what was out there for used in today's market with having such a lead time on vehicles. But in the condition our fleet is in right now, Wayne didn't think it was an issue to wait 12 months to get it in, so I'm okay with that. Especially considering the difference in prices. So.
Yeah.
Government purchase. Better value.
Any other discussion on that? Entertain a motion when you're ready.
I'll make a motion to approve the purchase of the van from Papic.
Second.
I have a motion and second to approve the quote for a Ford van from Papic Motors for $50,865. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item 6, consider memo of agreement for Transition Alliance Program.
So again, this is an annual agreement that, I don't know how long we've had it, but we share a TAP specialist, which works with our students with IEPs, kind of their transition to adulthood, and really the career exploration, job coaching, et cetera. So
It's, in my opinion, a good program.
Yeah.
I've personal experience with it.
I'll make a motion to approve.
I'll second.
We have a motion and second to approve the memo of agreement for the Transition Alliance Program. All in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item 7, consider Lyon County Riverboat Foundation grant, Forster Auditorium and Gaspar Stage improvements.
So, the grant here has two partners, the school foundation, which has already pledged $10,000 towards improvements in the auditorium, but in addition, River Valley Players at $7,500. And then the school, way I've written it in there, we would fund another $12,500. And then we're asking, as a part of the grant, an additional $30,000. Again, coming out of the study, but also following up with specific quotes from a flooring company for the stage floor, and then the Heartland Scenic for the lighting and the cyclorama. So I'm optimistic and hopeful that that would be funded by the riverboat. If not, we would revisit what our contribution would be towards, would we do everything, would we focus just on the stage or just the lights? So,
Projects like this have generally been more successful through the application process, right? There's multiple entities involved.
exactly.
I'm glad we were able to do that here. Hope that would work.
So you just need a motion.
We need a roll call on this one.
I do.
Okay, entertain a motion when you're ready.
I'll make a motion to approve the Riverboat Foundation grant as written.
Second.
Go ahead, Jake.
Roll call vote, Coob?
Aye.
Davis?
Aye.
Harder?
Aye.
Postma?
Aye.
Jans? Changed it up for you guys.
Almost threw me off there.
Making sure we're paying attention.
I'm making sure you're paying attention, it's been a long night. Keep you awake.
All right, moving on to item 8, consider policy. We have some policy under A to review and policy under B to rescind. Can we take those at the same time, Brian?
Yep.
Okay.
So again, I'm not gonna walk you through all the 400 series. You've had the track changes and then my kind of executive summary of each one of the policies. The 3 to rescind, I would note, those policies were literally one sentence each, and whenever the employee use policy was updated 401.13, staff technology use and social networking, those 3 policies really have been rolled into that overarching plan. So computer access, 401.15, 401.16, computer program development, and 401 process.
So one of the questions I had, and it looks like it was language that was added. So that's under 401.07, employee travel compensation. Travel outside of the district by the superintendent will be approved by the board president. So does that mean with that change, you have to come to whoever is board president for approval to go to AEA? And all that stuff? Siouxland Conference outside the district, is that right?
That's the way the policy reads, yeah.
Okay.
So basically, anytime I'm leaving the district, I'd have to let you know. And if you have a concern with that, you'd say, Brent, you need to stay in the district.
Do we know why that was added?
Again, I'm using ISB
Yeah.
as the sample.
Yeah.
You know, you
I mean,
know,
he gives you updates, and I guess that
Yeah,
would be considered approval unless you
yeah.
dictate it wrong.
Which one is that, Andy?
401.07.
So
Yeah,
that's
I
all
remember that.
travel, even if you use a school vehicle, not your personal, that would be.
Anytime.
How you implement that between the president and the superintendent, in my opinion, is up to the president and the superintendent. Does that mean that you have to say, Andy, can I go to the AEA meeting?
Well,
And I get your point, but remember, policy is policy.
yeah.
If you're
Right, if
swaying
we're not
on
gonna
one
follow
policy, if you're not gonna follow one policy, then you leave yourself open for issues on another interpretation.
As is standard language in many of these policies, however, the last paragraph says, the superintendent shall be responsible for developing administrative regulations regarding actual and necessary expenses, travel allowances, assignment of, blah, blah, blah. So, in my opinion, it's still up to the president and superintendent to determine how much communication there needs to be on those routine things especially.
Well, I mean,
Right.
whatever the,
Lyon, for example, for.
yeah, the 6th paragraph here, you know, has a 300-mile so if you want me to bring this, you want to table this one, and you want me to bring it back for the revisions, I'm happy to do that.
My question is, do we need to leave that in there?
I mean, it's basically saying it has to be pre-approved, because if you read the sentences right before that, travel outside of the school district must be pre-approved. And then it just says, if it's by the employees, it has to be approved by the superintendent.
Right.
Travel by the superintendent has to be approved.
Which makes sense for
Right.
Brent to.
But then it says travel outside the district by the superintendent must be approved by,
I mean, that gets in
And that
like a
seems
day-to-day
pre-approval.
management thing of Brent's job that.
could we put like a mileage? I mean,
Right.
travel more than, similar to how
Like I
it is.
said, again, how do you?
Yeah, I know
implement it?
what you're saying, yeah. Guess, you know, you put it into words, and
Yeah, I know.
I didn't mean to open up a can of worms either, but I read that and was like, really? I think we can work it out. Sound good to you? All right.
I think that's why I put my schedule out, and I try to let you guys know
Yeah.
ahead of time where I'm gonna be.
Yep.
And if I'm going to a conference or I'm going to a meeting, we need to talk about it if I'm out of the district too often, then guys, we can talk it at my review.
It's, yeah, no, I got it. Okay, anything else to add on those?
Nope.
All right, guess with that in mind, I entertain a motion to approve the review of the policies and approve the rescissions. as listed.
Make a motion to approve the policies to review and those to rescind.
Second.
We have a motion and second as stated, all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item 9, personnel hirings. Brent, if we can take A and B together, I'm okay with that.
Yep. I don't have anything to add about these positions, you know, our learner assistants are already kind of working for us. You know, they would, technically, they're subs right now, but they would become, you full-time employees.
So back in our conversation about the bonus incentive for
Yep.
hires, you still need one or two more?
Yep.
Learner assistants for, in
Yep.
addition to these three?
Yes.
And Cokes.
Lane advancements, you know, they've completed, they let us know in the spring that they were planning to make the lane advancement and followed all the appropriate procedures.
Yeah, and I did provide the actual
Memo.
credit and memos, so you
Yep.
can actually review it.
You want all those together, or just the hirings together?
Hirings and lane advancements together are fine, yep. Entertain that motion when you're ready.
I'll make a motion to approve the hirings and lane advancements as written.
Second. We have a motion and second to approve all items listed on item number 9, personnel. All in favor say aye. All opposed? Motion carried. Item J, announcements, dates to remember.
Listed in there, just a couple events. Obviously, we're in full swing with all of our activities. Would note that the October 1st is the high school Pops concert, 9 through 12 Pops concert, and then the week after is homecoming week, October 3rd through the 7th. And then we set our public hearings for October 10th. But it's also a no school day, professional development day for staff, so. That's
Our hearing was on the 10th, right? Both our
hearing,
hearings.
6:50 for the,
6:55. Okay. Scott, you're the only one who might have a conflict there so far? Everybody else good on that? Okay. All right, so that'll move us on to bill review, which we're gonna do during the meetings now, the first one,
right,
right?
yep.
Just because cameras and broadcasting are still on.
Yep.
Yep.
Review these, so.
So, print that.
You do? Okay, yeah.
It was in the packet.
Oh, well, that's where I got it from. Okay. I can print it from there then.
I got it, I already did.
I don't know what I was doing. I'm trying to break these up. I didn't do a very good job. Give you these instead. You're still gonna do a few review, those. You're gonna do these first. Keep these, and if you get done, then.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll keep this and deliver it myself.
I still have a resolution coming in too,
Just one resolution at a time, right? Was there multiple signatures in that one?
so.
This guy here?
Yes, just the two, there's a back page. Nope. Yep,
I got one signature, I
Yep.
didn't see the other one.
it's just I have to send two back, so if you could just sign it twice.
Oh, gotcha.
And I'm working on this one, I had the wrong paperwork for this one. Where did I pull that from?
Probably from her
And
email.
then this is to do the 6.5. And I have two of those as well. I did, I pulled it from email and for whatever reason I
Then
didn't. So thank you for
edited
that.
it.
Perfect. Then I think we're good. Thank you. Good, great. Okay, then you can deliver that with that.
Yep.
If you could, give me some copies or something.
Yeah, I just wanted to have the, letter from Road Valley Players and then
Okay. Yep.
Foundation to add to it.
If I can I, it's in the Word package, it just doesn't have signatures, so yeah, just when it's all executed.
Jeff's getting me the foundation.
Brent, this contract for the DJ for prom, the contract says it's between the DJ and, the activity coach.
Prom, yep, Kelly Weiler and,
Does that need to state Central Lyon versus Kelly?
She's acting as representative, so it's up to you. I can have the contract reissued.
I mean, as long as we're comfortable with her being the representative of the school.
that's where the check's gonna come from.
Okay. Just want to make sure that from a liability standpoint, that they're not gonna try to go back to her if something does
Right.
go wrong.
And I actually have the check until prom, so. I don't know. I can talk to her about it and get an updated contract.
If you're comfortable with it.
Curious,
it's fine.
yeah, I'm curious if it had, was it
Just
Jill,
hand it to me. so-
Jill or Amy's name in there for the previous year, or if it's a different DJ?
That, I don't know. It's definitely not something I know enough about to answer that right now.
on the prom committee in the last couple of years.
I'm on the after prom committee.
Oh,
Those
that's
are
what
two
it-
different things.
Don't get those confused.
And, I'm a forced member of the after prom committee, so again, don't,
Voluntold.
I'm voluntold, there you go. Andy's trying to mess me up in Assembly with all of this Robert's Rules of Orders and minutes. Tell you what, it's just not gonna look right. I don't think I can do it.
Call Heather.
Nope, I'll figure it out.
Just document it.
I'm just gonna document it.
Yep. People really wanna know, they'll watch the video.
Just gonna say, there's no vote, amend, vote option.
Like, put it all in text, just make sure you document the yes and no votes according to policy. You gotta do that.
I have it written down, I mean, okay.
So it's like 3-2,
Mhm.
put last names behind each vote.
Without a roll call?
Yes. Policy requires that,
Yes, sir.
but you don't need to go through all the silly stuff. There you go.
Yeah, I have, yeah.
That's where the amendments will have to have its own descriptors.
Yep.
And then the overall motion. Yeah.
So just on this one, is there something that this one is not? Like, I think it was, if you add up the difference, or add up those, it's not quite, I can't see where, usually it'll kinda,
I don't know, I went off what Bresky told me to pay, so I don't know.
I think it was 61, 73, like this is 4,300 for the totals of those.
Okay, so I'm overpaid or underpaid?
Under, I think,
Okay,
and it was 60-something, I can't guarantee it was that.
okay.
I'm sure it'll,
Oh, we'll spend plenty, no, that's not an issue, but yeah, I'll definitely have to document, why. Oh, 108, 70, 215, 42. 6173.
just works out to that cookie mouth kind of thing.
Right. I can't answer, you did sign it, so I will let you know what, why he didn't include 6173. Yeah, so it is 6173 underpaid.
Yeah, I probably shouldn't have signed it, but it's. Do we have a sub currently with the cooks? That's,
So currently, a couple of our staff members that retired,
yeah,
resigned, are subbing.
subbing right now.
Yep.
And then are we just really just short a para then, or do we?
Yep, so Kelly Dockers does not have a para right now. If you remember last year, Kyra Walatich was her
Okay.
para. And we could use another elementary para, as we have a student that goes to Sioux Falls each day. We would like to begin to transition back. You know, the children's home feels like now is the time to begin that process. And our conversation's been until we can find a one-on-one para to support that student, we can't begin that transition. So that's where the two additional paras would, two classrooms or two students that it would support.
Good. Entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make a motion to adjourn. I'll second.
We have a motion and second to adjourn. All in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Tough to top that one in length. Let's hope.
Yep, that's the longest since I've been here.
Probably not really good timing for you, Jackie, with an audit.
Not every meeting we spend $6 million either.
Yeah.
Exactly. So,
Yeah, that's not easy.
Well, there's so many different options and combinations.
Well, and the hard thing too is they're estimates too.
Yep.
So we don't even